The Monster of Gotham. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226. 20 Days of Work. The next day, Lizu woke up after a nap, changed into clothes with blood clots on them, and walked out. Claire and the other two were eating downstairs and changed into new clothes. Yours? Shah limped over and threw a set of clothes over. Where's the person? Lizu asked. Everyone knew who he was asking about, and Claire said she left first because of something. Yeah. Lizu took the clothes back to the room. An hour later, a car returned to the road. Yesterday's gunfight, fighting, liquor fights, etc. were like a nightmare, and when the sun came out again, everything in the nightmare would disappear. Claire drove, and Lizu sat in the passenger seat. Shirley and Shah sat in the back seat. Shirley, who was the most seriously injured, had already fully recovered. At this time, she was wearing a plaid skirt and was a cute little girl full of energy. Where are we going? Claire drove out of the town, but didn't know where to turn at the intersection. Wanted by the country and pursued by the umbrella company, the four seemed to have nowhere to go. Where were you going before? Lizu turned around and asked the Indian Shah. Ak, Shah answered, and then he felt something was wrong. The monsters we transported were going to Ak. Are we going to Ak now to get killed? Let's go to Ak. Claire trusted Lizu very much. She got a map at the gas station and asked for directions, and then hurried on the road. Just as the car was heading south under the scorching sun, two motorcycles passed by the car. The motorcycle stopped in front of the gas station, and the gas station worker wearing a sun hat couldn't help but whistled. Two women wearing hot pants, shaking their white long legs. One had short hair, and the other had pink and blue twin ponytails. Hearing his whistle, the short-haired beauty didn't move, but the woman with twin ponytails turned her head and hooked her finger at him. Hey, healthy boy. She twirled her colored hair with her right hand and looked up and down at the man who smelled of gasoline. When had the man ever seen such a woman? He couldn't help but stretch out his hand, put it on the woman's shoulder, and slowly moved down along her exposed white arm, scratching the sweat on her arm. How many days have you taken me around? If I can't find it, I'm going to Tokyo. The short-haired beauty finished refueling the motorcycle and walked over very tactlessly. Don't you see what I'm doing? The woman with twin ponytails raised her hand and slapped the guy in the face at the gas station. The force was so strong that the guy's head and neck turned his upper body and fell to the ground like a top. Boom. He covered his face, his head was dizzy, and he couldn't figure out why the woman who looked at him differently just now would slap him. What he didn't expect was even more. The woman pulled out a pistol and put it against his nose. The muzzle of the gun smelled of the woman's perfume, and it smelled a bit like, damn, people are about to die. Who would care about those smells? His Adam's apple moved up and down with difficulty, fearing that the other party's gun would go off. Healthy boy, I really like the smell of gasoline on you. Maybe your blood can make the car run. The young man wanted to shake his head, but he didn't dare to move. There is endless gasoline here. Why do you need my blood to refuel? But he didn't dare to say this, and could only beg for mercy with his eyes. By the way, have there been any, cars passing by recently? She seemed to be at a loss for words, racking her brains to think of the problem. There are many cars passing by here every day, he answered tremblingly. You are so stubborn. Do you have to be shot to speak obediently? Hearing her words, the young man at the gas station was about to cry along with the urine in his crotch. What he said was the truth, not to mention that this was a scene of villains threatening in some movie. Even if it was, he didn't think he was a hero who was not afraid of life and death and had to protect secrets. And the questions she asked were not confidential. You can't ask anything, said the short-haired beauty. The young man at the gas station nodded quickly and looked at her seriously. Get rid of him, and let's go. Get rid of him. His heart, which had just been relieved, suddenly rose again. This handsome woman who didn't like to talk became even colder and harder. Haha, leave it to me. A few minutes later, in the restroom of the gas station, the young man who was gagged and tied to a chair struggled to speak with his nose, expecting his savior to come. The two women drove the motorcycle, turned the lane, and ran up the mountain. They didn't go far, and observed the gas station under the trees in the mountains. "Are you sure?" asked the short-haired woman. "I only know they will come. The people of the umbrella company are very cautious," the woman with two ponytails replied. In her hand, she also had a bucket of Häagen-Dazs that she took from the refrigerator. "They will be here soon. Do you want to eat?" Yeah, it was quiet again. It was 10 miles southeast of the gas station along the road. It was a desert here. There was a lonely building beside the desert road, and there was an iron net outside. On the iron net, there is a sign saying contains radiation. Do not enter. Dangerous. There is also a big exclamation mark. It seems that, if the exclamation mark is big enough, it means that the situation inside is dangerous enough. However, except for the cameras that rotate from time to time, there is nothing moving in this building. The windows on the second floor are grey and no one has cleaned them for a long time. And inside the building, in addition to the dusty tables, chairs, and sofas, there is also an elevator that leads to the elevator dozens of meters underground. A group of special people live here. Today is a special day. "Walker, do you want to have a drink after you go out?" the man in a black suit asked his companion who was eating pasta next to him. "Of course, haha. Gary, I have to say that you are my best friend here," the man named Walker said. The boring and nonsense life is finally over. Gary cleaned up the plates and knives and forks in front of him and said, "We will check it out later, and we can say goodbye to this suffocating basement in the future." "Wait for me." Walker ate the pasta faster. This is a secret laboratory of the Umbrella Corporation, and the Umbrella Corporation logo can be seen everywhere. Every 20 days, a group of people will be sent to this secret laboratory. They have no way of getting much information, but the supervisor in charge told them that there is a monster that they must not contact in an iron cage. Artificial intelligence will be responsible for the monster's diet and daily life, and the monster has no intersection with them. And they only need to stay here for 20 days to ensure that the monster will not escape, and they can leave when the time is up. At first they were still afraid of the monster, but after a few days, they found that the monster seemed to never provoke them, so they got used to it, and began to feel that life was boring. Communication with the outside world is not allowed here, and the only technological equipment is electric lights. Well, what a boring and simple life. In Gary's memory, many seniors in the company came here to stay for the annoying 20 days, and then they were promoted and raised after returning. Gold plating resumes is the common idea of everyone else here. It is indeed boring here, but fortunately Gary met Walker, who is his good friend, and they can always chat happily. And today, Gary and Walker have both survived 20 days, and today they can leave. Now the two men, with their Umbrella Corporation employee ID cards tucked between their chests, walk to the iron cage again. Chapter 227 Shift Change. The cold metal wall, the same as yesterday, and the same as 20 days ago. It has not changed. Gary turned to Walker and shrugged. The patrol mission is over. Leaving this cold, breath-shortening corridor, Gary leaned against the wall. To be honest, although life here is boring, the work is really easy. Who said it wasn't? Walker fiddled with his badge and nodded in agreement. But we should go. Next time it's the lucky ones' turn. Lucky ones. Ha ha ha. Gary patted Walker's shoulder. He liked this sarcastic name a little. Another person came over, and the two of them restrained their intimate actions a lot. Most people here are very indifferent. Although there is no explicit requirement to keep a distance from each other, Gary still remembers that everyone was as cold as stone when he first arrived here. Gather, a total of 13 people. They took an elevator together. There were only 2 buttons in the elevator, up and down. Gary took 2 deep breaths to calm his excitement. I'll get a promotion and a raise when I go back, and then I'll go home to see my parents or children. He was stunned. During the 20 days underground, he began to try hard to adapt to the work, and then he began to get used to loneliness, so it was not until the end of the 20 days that Gary suddenly began to recall his past. A blank. Ding. The elevator has arrived. 2 umbrella security guards wearing full body protection came over and nodded. Follow me, you can leave. Hearing this, Gary relaxed and gave up recalling the past for the time being, leaving this hellhole first. Not only Gary, but also the other people couldn't help but smile. There was a black car parked outside, led by the security guards. Gary and others got in the car. Gary sat by the window and could look out. When he turned his head, the car door closed. The car backed away, but a car passed by and stopped at the door. This reminded Gary of the scene when he first came, just 20 days ago. A car came, and a car would leave. Oh, those lucky ones. Gary smiled and shook his head. He looked at the people coming out of the car and only moved his lips. I wish you a happy 20 days. A pair of familiar black leather shoes, and then a man with a curious face came out. Brown hair slicked back, his face was slightly excited. He looked at the people around him and felt sorry for the indifference on the faces of the people around him. Gary's face was pressed against the car window. The car he was riding in was moving back, farther and farther away from the building. It was also farther and farther away from the new lucky ones. But, that's Gary. Damn it. That's me. A voice in Gary's mind yelled at him, and he also yelled with that voice. It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. His voice was completely blocked in the car and could not be heard outside. Only Gary outside the car looked over curiously. He was watching the senior leave. Gary in the car knew it very well because this was what he did at the time. Everyone in the car turned to look at Gary, not understanding why he suddenly went crazy. The driver's speed was still very stable until the building completely disappeared from sight. That's you. Those who will take over our job are you. Gary sorted out everything in his head after seeing those people who looked exactly like him. For 20 days, none of us have left here, and we will always work here. Walker, who was sitting next to him, raised his hand with some concern and pressed his friend's shoulder. Gary, you have been locked up for too long, and you have mental problems. Others also looked at Gary with concern and pity. After 20 days, he became a underground, and his way to ascend might be cut off. It was really pitiful. Since he was a pitiful person, he could make a fuss if he wanted to. Others turned around and waited for their bright future. No, Walker, believe me. Gary lowered his voice and whispered in a voice that only Walker could hear. I saw with my own eyes just now that new people who look exactly like us have taken over our jobs. Those people maybe are replicas or clones. It's also possible. Gary suddenly felt his throat dry and itchy. The answer brought by the crazy mumbling in his mind made him dare not believe it. What's also possible? Walker smiled. Obviously he didn't believe what the mentally ill family said. Walker followed Gary's words and asked questions just to comfort him. The predecessors we replaced before were also ourselves. None of us left. He grabbed his cheek unnaturally with his right hand, pulling his lower eyelid so long that his eyeballs almost fell out. We are also clones. After speaking out the crazy guess in his mind, all the strength in Gary's body was drained. Brother, you need to rest well. Walker comforted him. Walker didn't understand this sentence at all. I want to get off the car. Gary sat up straight. I want to get off. Get off the car. There were only 2 umbrella security personnel in the car, and one of them was still driving. The umbrella security personnel who had been watching all this coldly stood up. Report. There was an unexpected accident. Consciousness awakened and applied for destruction. Damn it. Don't point that thing at me. The muzzle of the gun was raised and pointed at the position of Walker and Gary. Walker raised his hands above his head and shouted at Gary. Gary, how did you anger him? Apologize quickly. I don't want to die in this damn place. Walker, haven't you figured it out yet? Think carefully. Do you have any impression of everything in the past? We are things made on the assembly line. Our memories are fake, and even our names may be randomly generated by the computer. Although we don't know what their purpose is, every 20 days, we will complete our mission. We will either be brainwashed and implanted with new memories to complete new tasks, or we will be destroyed. No matter how loud Gary yelled, others just thought he was crazy. No one was willing to believe Gary's words. Bang! Shots were fired. Walker was shot in the middle of the eyebrow. The car suddenly fell into an eerie silence. Authorization obtained. All destroyed. The umbrella security guard who was driving also stopped and raised his gun. The 2 fully armed men facing several unarmed civilian staff, were like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. In 2 or 3 seconds, they harvested a lot of bullets. But there was the sound of an engine, and the speed sounded very fast. And it was getting closer. With a clang, the front of the car was hit, and the body of the car overturned. The 2 security guards who fired the gun also rolled with the car, as if they were in a washing machine. Gary also bumped around in the car uncontrollably, and his head was bleeding. When the car finally stopped rolling, Gary, who was shot, but luckily escaped with his life, saw a pair of long legs in combat boots outside the overturned car. A woman's voice could also be heard. There should be someone alive, right? Chapter 228 Underground Monster. There are living people here. Alice, lift the car up. The drowsy man looked at the woman squatting on the ground, and looking at him, and shook his head helplessly. Without a crane, how can we lift this car? He suddenly felt something was wrong, and his sight was slowly rising. Finally, it was suspended in the air. Bang, the car body rolled away again, and Gary fell on the seat. He looked out, and saw with his own eyes the short-haired woman, holding the car with both hands. It seemed that the car could be suspended in the air, because of her strength. How is it possible? Gary wanted to laugh. As her hand slowly lowered, the car bang landed steadily on the ground. Alice, open the car door, said the woman who had discovered Gary before. Then he saw the short-haired woman named Alice, raised her hand, and waved it gently. Click, click, click. The deformed iron sheet was torn apart, and as Alice waved her hand, it pierced into the ground. Gary stared at this scene in amazement. Oh, there's more than one alive. The woman with twin ponytails was a little regretful. She pointed the gun at Gary's head and said, "Get down." Gary almost got down subconsciously. Bang, 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 bang. 4 shots. Gary looked back and saw that the 2 Umbrella Company security guards had their heads blown up and fell to the ground. There were 2 more shots, nailing Gary's face into the leather seat. The shooting skills were not accurate, even if they were shot close to his face. Are they really from that place? Alice asked. Why are there only 2 security guards? They are all waste. Do we need to send out the army to recycle waste? It took me a lot of effort to find their running route. As she said that, she yawned. I don't know how long I have to sleep before I can dream. Alice didn't say much and walked towards Gary. As she gently grabbed with her right hand, Gary felt an invisible force holding his body and pulling him out. He just floated in the air. Now Gary had no doubt that this woman had some kind of terrible power. Take us to where you came from before. Okay, Gary nodded immediately, and the 2 women were stunned by the speed. A few minutes later, the gas station, the Umbrella Company's car, 2 motorcycles, and the body were engulfed in flames with a huge explosion. A car was back on the road. Did you kill him? Asked Alice, who was driving. Harley Quinn shook her ponytails and asked confusedly, who? The man at the gas station. If you kill him, who will report to the Umbrella Company? 200 meters away from the gas station explosion, the scorching sun hung on the main road. The man who was gagged and tied to the chair was almost fainted by the sun. The sweat fell to the ground and evaporated instantly. On this road that few people go, the next Patsy is his savior. Whoosh, a car drove by, and the owner of the car looked at the man tied to the chair and struggling hard, and retracted his head in fear, pretending not to see it, and continued to move forward. The car disappeared at the end of the road in an instant. Well, maybe the next Patsy will be his savior. Contains radiation. Do not enter if dangerous in the building. Surrounded by iron mesh, a group of people who just reported got on the elevator. The only button on the elevator was a down button. Gary shrugged and pressed the down button. The elevator door closed. There was a moment of weightlessness. They should be falling. Gary felt that the atmosphere in the elevator was a bit awkward, but he took the initiative to say hello and got cold eyes from everyone. When Gary was most embarrassed, a voice suddenly said, "We are all new here. I think it's best to get familiar with the work first thing." The elevator arrived. The door opened, and people came out one after another. They had all received relevant training before coming, and the work here was not difficult. "I'm Walker," the man who had just spoken said to Gary. "People who come here are very utilitarian, and they come semi-voluntarily. They don't come here to make friends. I'm Gary. Gary still had the awkward memory of the cold atmosphere just now. Anyway, we'll be colleagues for the next 20 days. Of course, but do you mind if I go to the room first? Walker didn't show his enthusiasm. But for Gary, this was already very friendly. Half an hour later, the elevator door opened again. The wounded family came out with two fully armed women. I don't know what's hidden here, Gary said. I only know that we are looking at a monster that's locked behind a metal wall. To be honest, I don't think anyone can break through that wall. Our role is more like decoration. Gary said, glanced at the handsome short-haired woman, and quickly corrected himself. I mean, ordinary people. He wouldn't be surprised if this woman waved her hand and threw a tank away. Are you sure that your little pudding is here? Alice asked Harley Quinn. If I can sleep right now and still dream, I can be sure. Harley Quinn laughed. It's hard for a girl without worries to dream. You have to understand her shy look may be cute to strangers, but the family next to her just stepped back in fear. In terms of being scary, Harley Quinn is scarier than Alice, who has great power. I just happened to see that picture when I was dreaming. Harley Quinn said with her fingers twirling her hair. That gas station must be a tip from Little Pudding. Just because of a dream? Alice asked herself. Why should she believe a crazy woman? He mentioned you in the dream. Harley Quinn is obviously not a person who likes to explain. Isn't it enough for her to have confidence in doing things? It's just in front, Gary said at the right time. The wall in front. If you can break it. Someone suddenly walked over in front. Who are they? The person questioned Gary. Gary looked at his colleague who should have died in the car and disappeared with the gas station and appeared in front of him again. The strange feeling tightened Gary's neck, making him breathless. That is, there is another self in this underground. Senior Director of Umbrella, I'm in charge of the North American branch. Harley Quinn reached behind her and walked forward. Bang, bang, 2 shots. The bullets hit the wall, leaving 2 holes. Her shot exceeded everyone's expectations. What was even more unexpected was that she didn't hit the target. Oh, sorry, I thought I could be like him and hit the target no matter how I shot. Harley Quinn apologized. Then she threw away the pistol, grabbed a baseball bat and jumped up. Bang, the solid wooden stick hit the head of the man who was shocked by the shooting in front of him, and the man fell to the ground. Harley Quinn stuck out her pink tongue. I'm more accurate with a stick shooting. The weird thing is that there is not even an alarm here. Everything seems to have happened. Gary looked at the man lying unconscious on the ground, walked over quickly and said, it's here. Open this wall. Are you sure? Alice looked at Harley Quinn. I think. No, I'm sure. Harley Quinn nodded vigorously. Alice took a deep breath, raised her hands, put them together and slowly spread them apart. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The flat metal wall was like tinfoil being crumpled by an invisible force and was separated. There were no monsters, and no one rushed out. What appeared in front of the 3 people was the interior decoration of the duplex house. An Asian man in a green suit was sewing something with a needle and thread. With such a big commotion, he naturally put down his work, looked up, and looked surprised. Lee. Alice looked at the man sitting on the sofa in surprise. Little Pudding. Harley Quinn had already run over and hugged the man's neck tightly. Only Gary was confused. He looked around the wall. There were indeed no monsters here. He looked at the Asian man sitting on the sofa, with Harley Quinn hugging his neck. Being able to have a relationship with these 2 women, maybe he is a monster? Chapter 229. Takedown. Lizu turned to look at the Harley Quinn who was hugging him. Why are you here? Didn't you ask me to come? Harley Quinn had already let go of her hand and grabbed the 3 rough cloth dolls sewn on the table, with sock-like bodies and soft bodies. Looking at the deflated pillow beside, it is not difficult to guess what is stuffed in the socks. These toys are also very distinctive. Harley Quinn racked her brains to guess. This is the big green guy. This is a gal. And, why does it look like the last toy has no characteristics? Green socks, button eyes, and a rough smiling face. It is better to say that this is some kind of funny kindergarten handicraft than a toy. Have you forgotten our plan? Lizu looked at Harley Quinn and asked with a headache. The crazy Harley Quinn was indeed not a good secretary. It seemed that Harley Quinn had messed up what he had asked. Help Isaacs and follow his orders. Harley Quinn said indifferently. Lizu stood up from the sofa. From Harley Quinn's attitude, he knew that she must not have completed the task well. He moved his eyes to another person. Alice? Lizu extended his hand to the handsome woman in front of him. Hello, you. Alice hesitated and extended her hand to shake hands with Lizu. She knew the man in front of her. They entered the hive together and lived and died together. Meeting again should be a scene of tears of joy and confession of feelings. However, things are unpredictable. When they met again, the person in front of her was just a stranger to her. So much so that the last words she said were just a simple greeting. Lizu turned his head and looked at Harley Quinn, asking with a questioning look. Didn't you ask me to find Alice? Harley Quinn curled up on the sofa and asked as a matter of course. You must not have slept well, Lizu just said. There was such a big movement underground that people were soon attracted. They all knew their mission was to guard the monster behind the metal wall, but when they walked over, they only saw a building with gorgeous interior decoration. Gary, what's going on? Walker asked the seriously injured Gary. Damn, you're bleeding, what's going on? Gary looked at his colleagues who were supposed to be dead and appeared in front of him again and wanted to tell everything. But he also understood that his life was now in the hands of a man and 2 women inside. Even if these 3 people let him go, the umbrella company would not let him go. Inside the wall, we have to leave as soon as possible. Lizu bent down, picked up the sock tube toy on the table, and said, I showed up. They must have taken action. Is it something interesting? Harley Quinn asked as she got up from the sofa. You must like it. He showed a crazy smile that was very similar to Harley Quinn's. We will be hunted down. Wow. Ha ha ha. Harley Quinn jumped up from the sofa excitedly, as if she had won the first prize in a slot machine. Alice had been standing there, staring at Lizu, but she was sure at this time that this Lizu was not the same person as the one she knew. That crazy and disgusting smile. He bowed like an English gentleman. His movements were a little awkward. It looked like he learned a non-standard posture on TV, and said to Alice at the same time, are you lucky enough to invite this beautiful lady to embark on a romantic escape journey together? Walking in the hail of bullets, you will definitely like that feeling to be able to talk about escaping so elegantly. One must be mentally abnormal. Alice nodded. She really had too many doubts. The 3 of them were ready to go out, but they didn't know what to do with the crowd that surrounded them. Should they stop them or let them go? Lizu led the way, and the crowd automatically parted in front of him. Of course not because he was popular here, but because of the pistol in his hand. As if to fear that others would not understand what he was holding, Lizu also fired a shot at the side. Bang! A small crater was made on the wall. Seeing the crowd disperse, he nodded very gentlemanly and said to one of them, I like your beard. Do you know Tony Stark? The person who was suddenly called out looked confused. He is a very sultry man, and he is narrow-minded, Lizu explained. The man stroked his mustache, as if he was hesitating whether to cut it off. He walked quickly to the elevator. Harley Quinn walked quickly, side by side with Alice. Alice wanted to say something. Haha, he is cute, isn't he? Harley Quinn left a sentence and quickly chased after him. Wait for me. Cute. Alice began to wonder if her brain was broken or the other person's brain was broken. Suddenly there was a big commotion in front. Gary, who had returned to his room for a short rest, opened his eyes and stretched. After he pushed open the door, he found that people were gathered together, so he walked over curiously. Excuse me, what's wrong? This is his personality. Even if his colleagues on the first day gave him the cold shoulder, he was still not afraid of embarrassment. The person in front turned his head, looked at Gary, widened his eyes, and quickly stepped back to distance himself from Gary. One by one, everyone looked back and saw Gary as if they had seen a ghost and quickly dodged to the side. Although Gary was full of curiosity, he still walked forward. The metal door around the corner was torn open by a strange and powerful force, and a familiar figure who was shot and injured was leaning against the wall. That's me. Gary looked at the man in shock. The other party also noticed him, but the injured Gary didn't say much, holding on to the wall, and quickly chased after the man and 2 women in front. When the elevator door closed and the 4 people left, Gary suddenly came to his senses. That's me. He had too many doubts. Yes. Too many doubts. He didn't ask just now, but now it's too late. Alice drove. Gary sat in the co-pilot. Lizu and Harley Quinn sat in the back seat of the car. I haven't been to the ground for a few years. I really want to bask in the sun. Lizu turned his head and looked at the flying desert. Where are we going? Alice asked. She only knew from Lizu that there were pursuers. Since there were pursuers, they naturally had to hurry to a safe place. Go to Ak, Lizu said. He just said that he hadn't been to the ground for a few years, but now he showed his mastery of the news on the ground. Ak, I know the way, Holly shouted from the back seat. Don't you want to treat his injuries first? He's dying. Alice glanced at Gary in the co-pilot seat, who looked sick and dying, and his body was still trembling. Lizu asked puzzledly, who is he? Didn't you bring him up? Alice felt a fire in her chest. Is this Lizu really a lunatic? Or is he pretending? Lizu pondered for a moment and nodded. Really? Then drop him off at the hospital when passing by. When the car passed a small town, it came to the hospital and sent the seriously injured Gary off the car. Then it set off again and rushed to Ake. There is a helicopter chasing us, Alice said. From the rear view mirrors on both sides, a helicopter was hanging far behind the car. Bang, 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 bang. A string of bullets attacked. The roof of the car was instantly pierced, and the bullets hit the co-pilot seat and penetrated the chassis of the car. Alice swerved the steering wheel to avoid being shot into a sieve by large caliber bullets. Shoot the plane down. Lizu took out a sock tube toy, pushed open the car door, and threw it out. The crudely handmade sock tube toy fell to the ground, rolled and bounced twice. Boom. It suddenly turned into a green-skinned giant covered with barbs, stomped its huge feet on the ground, and flew towards the helicopter like a cannonball. One punch. The helicopter exploded. The green monster with barbs tore through the explosion smoke and fell to the ground. When it was close to the ground, it suddenly turned back into a sock tube toy. The needle and thread broke, and the cotton wool flew out. When it landed completely, it had completely turned into a shrunken rag. Alas, due to personal emotional reasons, I was delayed in writing. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Acre Slums. From Lizu throwing out the sock toy, to the toy turning into a fierce green giant monster, punching the plane to pieces, and then the green giant monster turning into rags and falling to the ground. Everything happened in an instant. It was so fast that the helicopter pilot couldn't avoid it, and it was so fast that Alice didn't have time to be shocked, and she stepped on the accelerator. There was a bang. The falling rags flew up with the wind, raised by the wreckage of the helicopter hitting the ground, and disappeared in an instant. Alice, who was driving, looked at Lizu through the rear view mirror in the car. This Lizu was different from the Lizu she knew. He had more strange and powerful abilities and a more crazy personality. At this moment, Alice thought of someone. Dr. Isaacs. Harley Quinn once shot and killed Dr. Isaacs and said that he was just a clone, and there were many Dr. Isaacs like this. Doesn't that mean that the Lizu that Alice met before was also a clone? What about the Lizu in the car? Is he the real person or a clone? Her mind was confused, and she felt that the world had become unreal. I'll take a nap, Lizu stretched. I want to go too. I haven't been back for a long time. Harley Quinn closed her eyes immediately. The car was still moving. Alice looked at the two people sleeping in the back seat. For a moment, she couldn't understand what they meant. Does sleeping have a special meaning? But from the breathing, they really fell asleep and seemed to have a good dream. Alice drove the car, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere in the car. It was really good to have no zombies and no life threats, but she knew that, as long as the umbrella company was still there, everything in Raccoon City would repeat itself. And those clones, Dr. Isaacs, or other senior executives, were dangers that had to be eliminated. Alice supported herself on the lowered window with one hand. The only good news was that the pursuit did not continue. Suddenly she was startled and stepped on the brakes. Wake up. I don't know how Ake is going. Lizu and Harley Quinn's dream did not last too long. Alice's several emergency brakes woke up the two people who were sleeping lightly. She didn't want to run around like a headless fly under the pursuit of the umbrella company. It has been a few years since I came to this world. In fact, when Lizu first came to this world, he did not find the special features of this world. He was too lazy to explore the essence of the world. A world that looked ordinary in any way was just a resting place for him to stay for a while and then go home. When he first came to this world, Lizu found that he was tricked by Kingpin. He did not return to Gotham, but went to an unknown new world, a new world at the end of the 20th century. There are no ancient monsters, no superheroes, and no alien technology. Everything is very ordinary, but there are also benefits. The shuttle gate that almost disappeared reappeared and re-entered the 5-year countdown. There must be something in the Marvel world that prevents him from crossing time and space easily. And those gems are all in the Marvel world, including Kingpin's head. He will definitely go back and take them all. They will all belong to his trophies. Soon, the Umbrella Corporation came into his sight. Umbrella, representing the doomsday zombie world, is famous. The biochemical crisis swept the world, and almost all life on Earth was destroyed. If I intervened in all this, would it be particularly easy to explore the world? According to his investigation, the research and development of Umbrella Corporation has reached a certain level and is about to enter the final stage, so he found the upper echelons of Umbrella Corporation, and with just a handshake, he gained an ally. Dr. Isaacs, a very reliable ally. An ally who infinitely exploits Lizu, does not give any return, and always wants to kill Lizu. Lizu gets nothing in return from him. Good ally, but even so, Lizu thinks that their cooperation is very successful. Dr. Isaacs is still his most reliable ally. This reliable ally controls Umbrella Corporation, especially the mature biochemical weapons under the research of T-Virus. Even if Lizu is so powerful, he will never survive in the face of these monsters. Dr. Isaacs dare not act rashly. Perhaps the handshake at that time is the reason why Lizu can survive until now. Dr. Isaacs can only invite Lizu underground and send a group of clones to patrol every 20 days. As for why it is a 20-day cycle, because if it exceeds this time, someone will definitely go crazy. The imprisoned Lizu has no idea what ability it has to make people go crazy under his influence, and this kind of madness is hidden. Crazy people will quietly deal a heavy blow to the Umbrella Company. After imprisoning Lizu, the doctor obviously did a lot of research. They seem to have some agreement, but no one knows the details. It's a pity that the current Lizu was forced to come out from the underground because of the misunderstanding of the Harley Quinn. Lizu dared to guarantee that he told the Harley Quinn that Alice was very important and would bring her to himself after finding Alice. He even put quotation marks on himself. There are many Lizu outside. Harley Quinn is very efficient and rescued him directly. When Lizu came out of the underground, his agreement with Dr. Isaacs was invalid. Not long ago, the pursuers came quickly, staying underground, waiting for the destruction of this world, and letting the world's exploration naturally reach 100%. Although hiding underground like a turtle is not tasteful, Lizu has to admit that this is a very reliable method. Not only is it implemented quickly, but the results are also fast. He has no interest in sticky and smelly zombies. The road ahead of the car became bumpy. Lizu glanced at the clown girl who was looking out with her, but next to him, rubbing his chin and thinking, should I twist her head off to express how unhappy I'm now? But twisting her head off can also be connected to her. The neck is live buckle. Even though his profitable business was ruined by the clown girl, Lizu still didn't look that angry. They have entered the AK area, and in front of them are unfinished buildings and ruined slums after artillery bombardment. The road became more and more bumpy, and the collapsed buildings often blocked the road ahead. Bang! Something rushed out and hit the car window. The car was hit by a huge force and rolled over uncontrollably. Bang, bang, bang. The collisions continued one after another, and the car door on the side closed to Lizu was deformed and dented. The car finally couldn't bear it and turned upside down. Fastened with seat belts, the three people in the car finally saw who was hitting the door. First time seeing it with my own eyes, Lizu turned his head and looked at the monster with its head pressed against the car window. Is this the liquor? Alice closed her eyes, as if brewing something. When she opened her eyes again, boom. The car actually floated up, rolled in the air, and then landed heavily, but the licker's claws were stuck in the car and were not thrown off. The licker did not attack, but lay on the car, surrounding it without attacking. The car was wrapped into a meatball. There are more, Alice said with a breath. In front of the car was a flesh-colored ocean. Monsters without skin and on all fours crawled from the end of the road. A rough estimate of the number was at least 100. Who is chasing you? Alice asked Lizu. He shouldn't have the ability to do that. Lizu shook his head decisively. Ability? Alice was puzzled, but soon she understood what Lizu meant by ability. On the ruins that the lickers had climbed from, people standing on their feet actually crawled out. They were not zombies, but people. They had guns in their hands, and the lickers swarmed around the crowd like hounds. Chapter 231b. The bearded man carrying a double-barreled shotgun walked forward. Pa, he spat, rubbed his hands, climbed over the waste brick wall, panting, and came to the front of the car. Groups of lickers dispersed, their tongues twisting, and although they stared at the car with a covetous look, they dared not move. The bearded man walked to the front of the car and pointed the double-barreled shotgun at the lickers on the windshield. The lickers made a strange sound hissing and actually climbed out of the car obediently like a puppy. He looked at Alice sitting in the driver's seat and smiled. The umbrella person? Although he was smiling, the muzzle of the gun was pointed at Alice's head through the windshield, ready to shoot at any time. Inside the car, Alice held her breath and watched the strange scene outside the car. Someone could actually control the lickers and even train them like hounds. She was pointed at her head with a gun, but her expression did not change. Instead, she turned back to look at Lizu. Do you know? Since Lizu pointed out that he came here, he must know what happened here. Lee opened the car door and walked out, squatting on the ground and poking the licker lying on the ground. With guns pointed at their heads and surrounded by lickers, the three people acted too relaxed. SSSS. The red tongue squirmed, and the barbed teeth on the tip of the licker's tongue pointed at Lizu's head, as if it would pierce his head at any time. This series of actions was tantamount to seeking death. But what surprised Alice even more was that the licker lay motionless on the ground, allowing Lizu to touch him. So cute. Harley Quinn also rushed out of the car, squatted on the ground like Lizu, and reached out to touch the licker. Alice felt nauseous in her heart. Harley Quinn shouted again, I'll give him a name, Buddy. What a good boy. The licker named Buddy lay on the ground, allowing Harley Quinn to touch him. Such a weird scene not only shocked Alice and the bearded man who came with a gun, but even Lizu, who was squatting on the ground, looked at the Harley Quinn beside him in surprise. What kind of aesthetics is this? He was just curious about such ugly things, but he didn't expect that Harley Quinn would like it so much. Abnormal aesthetics. Lizu suddenly touched his face and then looked at the licker lying on the ground, looking for similarities between them. If he didn't look like the licker, why would he also get the nickname of Harley Quinn? Fortunately, the weirdness didn't last too long, and the bearded man couldn't help but break the embarrassment with a big laugh. Ha 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 ha. Lee, your friend is so interesting. The bearded man walked to Lizu with a shotgun and patted Lizu on the shoulder with his big hand, making Lizu stagger and unable to stand steadily. Alice, who was sitting in the car, got out of the car. She had already confirmed that the bearded man must know Lizu. As for whether Lizu knew this bearded man, who are you? The air was quiet again. Ha ha ha. The bearded man laughed again, as if he liked Lizu's joke very much. Our cargo had an accident before, and just now there was news that a car rushed in here. I thought those people had new moves, but it turned out that you are back. The bearded man dragged Lizu back and waved at the ruins. Suddenly, groups of lickers retreated like a tide. Only those people were still standing on the ruins, waiting for Lizu and others. When they got closer, they seemed to know Lizu, and even greeted him with a friendly attitude. As for the lickers, they all went into the cracks of the ruins and disappeared into the darkness. By the way, didn't you say you were going out to get the potion? Have you got it? The bearded man climbed up the broken wall with great effort, turned his head, and saw the clown girl rushing up quickly, and another short-haired woman also came up easily. He exclaimed that it was great to be young, and then looked at Lizu, who jumped up from a standing position. His legs seemed to be equipped with springs, and jumped up easily. It seemed that he was still performing. After jumping up, he bowed and saluted towards the empty ruins behind him. The corner of the big bearded man's mouth twitched, and he always felt that Lizu was a little different from before. "Let's go. Shirley is still waiting for you to save her." "Shirley?" Alice beside him suddenly asked excitedly. "Shirley Birkin, the little girl with golden hair?" The big bearded man nodded and gestured at his waist, about the same, this tall. "What's wrong with her?" Alice was almost sure that she was infected with a G-virus. On the side, the clown girl came to Lizu and said, "Isaacs has been looking for her." Her movements were sneaky, but her voice was not small at all, and everyone present could hear it clearly. Alice was impatient and urged, "Quick, take me to see Shirley." The big bearded man was confused. Why didn't Lizu and the others seem to know that Shirley was infected with a G-virus? But Alice's nervousness was not fake, and he quickly turned around to lead the way. Going down from the ruins, there was a refugee concentration camp. Not everyone lived in tents. The buildings were tilted after fighting and explosions, and some low spaces were used for shelter. When the big bearded man reached below zero, they came to a dilapidated tent. A small lamp was lit, and the light in the tent was dim. Pulling aside the curtain, a little girl was lying on the small bed, her eyes closed, her face flushed. A man was sitting beside the bed, wearing a black short-sleeved shirt and a red leather jacket beside him. She turned her head when she heard the voice, first glanced at the big bearded man, and just as she was about to speak, she saw Alice and Lizu. "Alice, you're here." She stood up in surprise and walked to Alice's side. "Thank you for protecting us before. Otherwise Shirley and I would have died in Raccoon City." G-virus. Lizu had already sat down by the bed. The big bearded man did not disturb this reunion of acquaintances and walked out. He did not know this little girl. However, Lizu reached out and pressed the back of the hand of the girl named Shirley Birkin, feeling the burning heat on her skin. "Did you get the serum to treat G?" Claire asked Lizu. She seemed to be very familiar with Lizu. "Serum? No, that thing was the secret of the Umbrella Company." As a prisoner of the Umbrella Company, how could he possibly come into contact with those things? But he still sighed. "It's worthy of me." In his opinion, each Lizu is not simple. Alice combined with T-virus, Shirley combined with G-virus, and even Ake, the bee that can control the liquor. What about Shirley? She may soon become Dr. William. Claire was anxious. "This is too easy for little pudding," Harley said to the sleeping Shirley. "Everyone here knows Lizu, but the Lizu that everyone knows is different." Claire turned her head and suddenly saw Shirley turned into a Barbie doll. Lee. Alice had seen the ability of this Lizu before, and she explained, "In this way, Shirley's injuries can be controlled. As for whether Shirley, who turned into a toy, can still wake up, she can't guarantee it." Because Alice suddenly realized that this Lizu might not know Claire and Shirley. "There is bad news." The bearded man went out for a while and came back seriously, saying with some breathlessness, "The Umbrella Corporation is going to take action against us. It may be because we have robbed too many goods. Dozens of armored vehicles are gathering here." He glanced at the bed and there was no trace of the little girl Shirley. "Where is Shirley?" The bearded man saw that everyone's eyes were looking at the Barbie doll in Lizu's arms. He felt that this exquisite Barbie doll with its eyes closed was somewhat similar to Shirley. Chapter 232. Tyrant besieges the city. Outside the ruined slum, a dusty grey motorcycle pressed the airflow and flashed across the ground, leaving behind the roaring sound of the engine. The driver had his hood on his head, and the whole person was hidden in the shadow. Rumble. The ground shook crazily, and in front of him, on the endless horizon, there were dozens of iron trucks coming. Umbrella Corporation? He saw the Umbrella Corporation logo on the front of the car. He turned the handlebars and turned into the grass beside the road before meeting the convoy. The iron trucks did not stop for a moment and passed him by at full speed. There were as many as 50 cars. A few minutes later, the hooded man pushed the motorcycle out of the grass, looked at the shadow of the convoy, gritted his teeth, turned around and chased after it. Ake is a dilapidated base built by a group of apocalyptic people. They promote the theory of apocalypse, and after Raccoon City was flattened by nuclear weapons, they pointed the finger at Umbrella Corporation. This illegal armed force naturally caused the local troops to suppress it, but this group of people only likes guerrilla warfare and cannot be killed. They are like flies. Even if you survive this summer, they will come out and burst again next summer. So Mexico bought biological weapons from the Umbrella Company, but some people who pay attention to this battle believe that it was the United States that bought the weapons and put them in Mexico. As for its purpose, everyone knows Simazeo's heart. There are many different opinions, but someone can definitely guess the truth. No one thinks that egg can withstand this biological invasion. After all, some people who know the inside story also know how Raccoon City was destroyed. Nuclear weapons are just used to clean up the mess. It is those biological monsters that really destroyed Raccoon City. But Egg's people once again showed their terrible ability and repelled these evil people again and again. And these people in the slums have mastered a special technology. Control the lickers and turn the biological weapons used by the Umbrella Company against them into their own weapons. Among bees, the queen bee is the controller of the hive. I don't know what means were used, but the people in the slums also gained the ability to control the lickers. Just like the queen bee controlling the worker bees, these people are also called bees or bee people. On the ruins, Lizu stood on a high place, with his hands on the pergola, and looking into the distance. The Joker girl was not interested in that. She kept swinging the yo-yo in her hand, chewing bubble gum, and blowing bubbles in her mouth. The expressions of the others were solemn. Looking at the 40 or 50 metal trucks coming in the distance, he seemed to have a headache. The small ruins were as fragile as a piece of paper in front of him. The bearded man glanced behind him, and more than a dozen people came to his side. As they waved, hundreds of lickers rushed out of the gap and confronted the metal trucks in the distance. The others quickly retreated and left the battlefield. "Pa, why are there so many?" The bearded man spat, but he also felt a headache. Because he knew that the 50 trucks were definitely not ordinary goods. With the name of Umbrella, they certainly won't be kind enough to send weapons to them. Umbrella must have found some way to deal with the bees. Alice looked at the trucks in the distance, then turned to look at Lizu. She knew that the purpose of Umbrella's company coming here was definitely not this small place. But Lizu, what should we do? Alice asked. In fact, 50 vehicles were not a problem. If it was 50 tanks, Alice might be able to escape, but it was only 50 trucks, and she would not have a headache, even if there might be an elite team hidden in each of them. Lizu scratched the back of his head seriously, and said very solemnly, "Let's run away. Run away." Alice frowned. She felt that this Lizu was very unreliable. Unlike the Lizu she knew before, he was full of weirdness, madness, and funny, and very timid. It may be Isaac's. He knows I'm on the ground and must want to kill me. Lizu covered his neck with a panicked expression. "I'm most afraid of death. Ha 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 ha. Actually, being killed once is nothing. After all, I have 3 lives." He suddenly laughed, and his crazy words made people frown. 3 lives? His startled appearance made everyone confused about his thoughts. In fact, not only him, but also the people in the 40 or 50 iron trucks that gradually dispersed and surrounded the Axlum area, could not figure out his thoughts. In the truck, Dr. Isaacs frowned and looked at the computer, and the center of the camera was Lizu. What does this madman want to do again? No matter what he wants to do, Dr. Isaacs grabbed the microphone and said, "Everyone, pay attention, act immediately. Clear the obstacles. Receive the order. Release T-103. Clear the obstacles. Repeat. Receive the order. Release T-103. Clear the obstacles. Repeat." The bearded man standing on the broken wall frowned, looked at the scattered and motionless trucks, and said, "What do they want to do? There are things in the carriages, and they want to release those things." Alice said. Without her saying it, everyone knew, but they were puzzled about what was in the carriages. Such a big battle, it was obviously not an ordinary thing. Ha ha ha, if it's still a liquor, then I have to thank the Umbrella Company. The bearded man laughed. His smile suddenly withdrew, and he waved his hand with a cold face, saying, "No matter what it is, go." with more than a dozen B-men urging at the same time. Hundreds of lickers used all four legs to quickly climb down the ruins and quickly rushed towards the 40 or 50 trucks in the distance. Under human control, they not only acted quickly, but also in an orderly manner. Fearless and powerful, they are the main force and the best choice for treading on mines. In the blink of an eye, the group of lickers rushed to the iron truck. Hundreds of lickers dispersed, with only 2 or 3 lickers in each car. Sporadic gunshots rang out, and the umbrella driver who was responsible for driving was quickly killed. No licker died. At this time, the door of the iron car was finally opened. It seemed that there was something extremely heavy inside, and the car was shaking. The bearded man controlled a licker to kill the driver. He laughed and shouted fantastic, but his consciousness kept urging him to move towards the back of the car. He didn't think that the umbrella company was so kind as to come and die. The car must be loaded with weapons that can attack Ake. It is very likely that there is a special operation team hidden in each car. This is also the most dangerous force he can think of. The licker climbed out of the broken windshield, climbed over the roof, and crawled towards the back of the car. Just as the licker was about to stick its head out, a hand wearing a black glove suddenly stretched out and easily grabbed the licker's head. Bang! The licker was like a helpless little rabbit, being grabbed by the hand, and smashed to the ground, and smashed into a pulp. The bearded man was startled, and immediately controlled the other one to crawl over, but was crushed on the head by a huge black boot. Not only the licker he controlled, but also the lickers controlled by others were the same. Retreat. The bearded man shouted hurriedly. Even if the licker retreated faster, more than half of them were killed or injured in an instant. At this time, the weapon that easily killed the licker was revealed. It was a bald man wearing a windbreaker and 2 meters tall. There was one in every car, and there were as many as 40 or 50 bald men. 40 or 50 tall bald men and windbreakers walk towards the ruins step by step. Chapter 233 Toy God of War. The bearded man spat again, frowned at the bald man in the windbreaker, and said, "What is that?" Although they looked human, no one believed that these monsters were still alive. Umbrella Corporation has so many biological weapons. This must be one of them. Alice looked at Lizu. She felt that Lizu must know something. The tyrant is besieging the city. Let's run for our lives. Lizu really used the same rhetoric, persuading people to run for their lives, but those who were interested heard more information. These things are called tyrants. When they first saw it just now, everyone saw the ability of the tyrant. However, as the monsters got closer and closer, no one ran away. The lickers had retreated to the edge of the ruins, opening their mouths and roaring silently at the tyrants. This was their last position to hold on, and it was obvious that they would not retreat even if they died. Alice asked, "Tyrant, Umbrella Corporation's biological weapons?" There was no need to ask her question. Everyone present could guess it. Ah, Buddy. Buddy was beaten to death. Harley Quinn pointed to the ruins. Just now, a licker jumped up and pounced on the first tyrant. Its tongue shot out like an arrow, pointing directly at the tyrant's left eye, trying to penetrate its eyeball and pierce its brain. Who would have thought that the tyrant suddenly raised his arm and smashed down with his fist? The power of his fist was too strong, and the licker buddy was smashed into the ground and exploded into meat paste. I want revenge for Buddy. Ah. Killed my little cutie. Harley Quinn cried, as if she was very angry. Lizu was confused and picked his ears and asked, "How do you know it's Buddy?" In his eyes, those lickers looked exactly the same. Even the bearded man who could control the lickers was stunned. He had some impression of the licker named by Harley Quinn. That licker was under his control, but that Buddy had died in the previous wave of attacks. Ah. I want revenge for Buddy. Harley Quinn didn't explain at all and raised her gun and shot. It turned out to be a random guess. What a crazy woman. The bearded man suddenly realized, but he didn't dare to really explain it. And only when Harley Quinn opened fire did they come to their senses and immediately opened fire to help the lickers in front of the ruins. 50 tyrants. Dr. Isaacs obviously invested a lot of money, and now they are encircling them, slowly shrinking, and everything they encounter along the way, whether alive or dead, is crushed into slag. What should I do? Alice was also firing to support, but she found that bullets were useless. These monsters reminded her of the pursuers that her former friend Matt had mutated into. Although the strength and speed of these monsters were not as good as Matt's, there were many of them. Her ability was also of little help, not as good as bullets. Look at them. Lizu jumped forward, squatted on the broken wall and pointed forward. Others immediately noticed that there was something wrong with the tyrant's windbreaker. The windbreaker was very large, and bullets would be bounced off when they hit it, and there was a strange device covering the windbreaker. The bearded man was the first to hear Lizu's words, and he immediately decided, take off the windbreaker. Immediately, 7 or 8 lickers pounced on one of the tyrants, gathered together and bit it. The shoulder strap with T-103 was torn off, revealing its gray skin like a dead person. Although the tyrant was fighting back quickly, his body was not very agile, and the windbreaker was torn more and more under the desperate pulling of the lickers. In the end, all 7 or 8 lickers turned into meat paste, and the windbreaker on the tyrant turned into tattered strips of cloth. Raw. Who knew that the tyrant, who had been keeping his mouth shut, suddenly raised his head and roared. Without the windbreaker, the body was not damaged, but expanded rapidly. The muscles turned outward and gushed out, and hardened like grey rock in a very short time. The tyrant's body increased by 30 centimeters in an instant. The leather gloves fell off, and his right hand turned into a thick and strange claw, which was very disproportionate to the left arm. After taking off his windbreaker, the tyrant took a step and ran, and the ground shook violently. It's broken. That's not an exoskeleton, Lizu said in annoyance, as if he realized it later. That's the restraint clothing that controls their power. Now that the clothes are taken off, we are dead. It was just a little late to find out. During this period, the others also controlled the lickers to desperately take off the windbreakers on the tyrants. Doing so actually liberated all the power of the tyrants. The first tyrant that liberated its power ran straight towards Lizu. With a wave of his right hand, the abandoned car was lifted up and rolled into the ruins. Quick, don't destroy those restraint clothing. The bearded man's eyes were red, and the pupils could not be seen. The other bee people were the same, all with red eyes. The lickers were also crazy, using their lives to be an insignificant tide, trying to delay the tyrant's advance. But they didn't destroy the restraint clothing, and the restraint clothing on the tyrants was automatically taken off. The 50 tyrants that were walking slowly forward now ran at full speed, unstoppable. The tyrants used their hands and feet to close the distance between the two sides in a very short time. Run. The bearded man's eyes were red. He had given up. Facing such an invincible army, they had no chance of winning. Who knew that Lizu would actually take a step and run forward quickly? Just now everyone wanted to beat him and suggested running, but now everyone knew that the only way was to escape. But he rushed forward again. Lizu was unarmed. He ran to the first tyrant, jumped up as flexibly as a monkey, and pressed his hands on the tyrant's head. As soon as his palms touched, the tyrant quickly raised his hands to grab Lizu in the air, but his action stopped in an instant. The tyrant's head rolled off his neck with a bang and fell to the ground. The headless tyrant's body tilted and hit his head, making a crackling sound. Half of the tyrant's head was squeezed out and flew to the ruins and fell at the feet of Alice and others. Alice bent down and picked up the head. Plastic toys. She remembered the scene where Lizu turned Shirley into a toy. Doesn't that mean? Alice's eyes were on Lizu again. He had already rushed into the group of tyrants. His arms were extremely dangerous. Anything he touched would surely turn into a plastic toy or a stuffed toy. The entire terrible battlefield turned into a childish scene at this moment. Bloody childishness. He was like a god of war walking out of the castle in the fairy tale kingdom. Alice could hardly imagine that this person was the same person as Lizu just now. On the contrary, he had a slight resemblance to the Lizu in her memory, the Lizu who sacrificed himself in the end to let them get on the car and escape. At the same time, a voice came out, I know you have this weird ability, but can you really violate the law of conservation of energy? See how many you can turn into toys. It was in the car. Alice closed her eyes gently and caught the radio wave signal in the air in an instant. She opened her eyes flashing with light. Her body bounced up and actually soared into the sky, rushing towards a car in the distance. There was the main control console. Alice stepped on the iron carriage with her feet, making a creaking sound. She waved her hand again, and the iron sheet automatically separated, allowing her to fall into the carriage. Ice arcs. Alice gritted her teeth when she saw the mastermind behind the scenes. She glared at the frightened and surprised Dr. Ice Arcs, bleeding from all 7 orifices, and fell to the ground without a sound. Even after killing Ice Arcs, Alice was still worried, as the tyrant's siege had not been lifted. She didn't believe that she had killed the real Ice Arcs, who was definitely just a clone. The computer system flashed. Alice stared at the person on the screen. Red Queen. Chapter 234 Toys and the Real Body. Alice saw Red Queen again. Aren't you in the hive? That day, a nuclear bomb swept through Raccoon City. Red Queen's moth aboard remained in the hive. It should have completely dissipated with the nuclear explosion, but now it appeared in Dr. Ice Arc's computer. The hive was not destroyed by nuclear weapons. Red Queen said concisely, "You didn't kill the real Dr. Ice Arcs. He is still hiding in an underground base in North America, preparing a crazy plan to destroy the world." Alice was anxious. The tyrants were besieging the city outside, and the small slums were about to be razed. She had seen the power of those biological weapons with her own eyes. "Can you help me?" Having said that, Alice didn't believe Red Queen. The other party was the artificial intelligence of the Umbrella Company, and should only obey the Umbrella Company. But she didn't think that Red Queen appeared just to talk to her. "I can't help you, but someone can help you." Red Queen's expression was always calm. "Who?" Alice asked. Lizu. Alice was confused. The real Lizu was fighting against the tyrant outside. She flew over when Lizu was fighting against the tyrant outside, just to find a way to control the tyrants. If Lizu really had a way, why would he risk his life? Red Queen expressed Alice's doubts. "The real Lizu has shares in the Umbrella Company." The real Lizu. It turned out that the powerful Lizu was also a fake, or one of the clones. "Where can I find him now?" The real him. Alice was anxious, and suddenly she turned her head and noticed someone approaching quietly. The man was wearing a hoodie and acting sneaky. "Lizu." Alice immediately recognized the man. "Is it him?" Alice asked. The face of Red Queen on the computer quickly disappeared and quickly turned into a vicissitudes of life old man. "I only know one way to determine whether he is Lizu," the old man said. Everything in front of her changed too quickly, and Alice was a little dizzy. Why was it Red Queen who was talking to her just now, and she turned into an old man in an instant? They didn't shy away from talking to Lizu, who was wearing a hood. The old man simply introduced himself. "I'm also a shareholder of Umbrella Corporation, but Ice Arcs controls 50% and I only control 40%. So I have not been able to interfere with Ice Arcs' decisions over the years, but if Lizu is here, I can influence Ice Arcs' decisions. My father once founded Umbrella Corporation with Ice Arcs, and then Lizu joined and became one of the shareholders, owning 10% of the shares given by my father. But no one expected that Ice Arcs had long wanted to embezzle the company and lock Lizu underground. Umbrella Corporation became Ice Arcs' private company. I looked for him for a long time, but with Ice Arcs here, I couldn't do it too obviously." Alice listened carefully, and even Lizu, who was standing outside the car, heard it and came over. "You said I'm a clone." He looked at the old man on the screen. The news was too shocking. The old man continued, "As far as I know, my father once did an experiment for him. After the experiment, many Lizu appeared. No one can be sure whether they are real or fake. Ice Arcs has been looking for him. He wants to kill Lizu and completely control the Umbrella Company. The Lizu below is just the most peculiar one, not the one who actually holds shares." Lizu stared at the screen with his eyes wide open. "You said there is a way to confirm whether I'm real, but I don't have my previous memories. Memory cannot determine your identity. Maybe my father cleansed and changed your memory at that time, so that you can survive Ice Arcs' poisonous hands. The real Lizu can turn other Lizu into toys. If you can turn another Lizu into a toy, you are real." Alice felt strange. Not to mention that the Lizu outside has the ability to turn people into toys. First of all, to determine whether a person has shares, isn't there a way to determine it within the Umbrella Company? There are too many clones, so it is impossible to tell the real from the fake. Or, 10% of the shares is just made up by this old man. But why did she lie? Also, Lizu was not imprisoned underground. Alice was sure that the Lizu outside, who had the ability to turn living things into toys, was willing to stay underground. There were too many doubts. The strange Lizu beside her seemed to be persuaded and jumped out of the car. Alice hurriedly followed him out of the car. Lizu in the distance was fighting fiercely. When he touched it with his palm, there must be a tyrant turned into a plastic toy. In the battle, the plastic toy was crushed. But it was very consuming for Lizu to change dozens of times at a time. Lizu looked at the self who was fighting, and had no intention of communicating. Back then in the world of the old gods, he was trapped in the time loop, and could use himself as a sacrifice. At this time, it was just to destroy another self. Even if the personality was different, his cruelty to himself had not changed at all. He grabbed Lizu, who was fighting from a distance. Lizu, who was fighting in the distance, suddenly turned into a plush toy and fell to the ground. "It seems that I'm real. Stop the action," said Lizu with a hood. At the same time, inside the car, the old man's voice came from the computer. "T-103, stop the action." The Red Queen's announcement came out. "The elimination plan is stopped. The elimination plan is stopped." Repeat. The tyrants all stopped. No one knew what happened in the slums that suffered heavy losses, but some people noticed the hooded Lizu standing with Alice. Claire carried a gun and ran over quickly. She couldn't believe it and said, "How is it possible?" Just now, she saw with her own eyes that the fighting Lizu turned into a plush toy and fell to the ground. The hooded Lizu appeared again, and Claire felt familiar with the aura of this Lizu, but this familiarity was only in the past few days. Compared with the Lizu in Raccoon City, it was still unfamiliar. Thinking of this, Claire's steps towards Lizu suddenly froze. Since there can be two Lizus, why can't there be 3, 4? Here's a toy I made. The hooded Lizu walked towards the tyrant and picked up the plush toy. Next to the stuffed toy, there was a crude toy made of a green sock tube, an ugly humanoid sock tube toy, and an exquisite Barbie doll. He turned Shirley into a toy, Claire said. Compared to the somewhat abnormal Lizu, perhaps she was more willing to believe the Lizu in front of her, or to try to believe him. Lizu stared at Shirley's toy for a while, walked back to the car, and looked at the old man on the computer. "How can I restore my memory? Come to the underground hive in Raccoon City to find me." Chapter 235. Underground Meat. The biochemical crisis broke out in the world at a very fast speed. The news was still promoting that everyone should not go out casually to avoid terrorist attacks. The next second, zombies knocked on the door and took away the lives of everyone in the house. This was a premeditated fall of the world. The umbrella company played a great role. Many places began to spread the news that it was the umbrella company that caused the destruction of the world, and the umbrella company did not refuse to accept this honor. So, some people began to march in the streets. They held up signs, raised them very high, and shouted loudly. Then, they were surrounded by zombies. A few hours later, a larger parade took to the streets. They had no signs or banners, and they didn't know how to shout. Even the team was very messy, but all the living people hid in their homes and dared not speak. Marching to protest is really a good tradition, and zombies learn it the fastest. 3 days later, Lizu, Alice, and Claire took the helicopter prepared by the umbrella company and flew into the sky. Sitting in the helicopter, Alice looked at the Joker standing in the ruins and was hesitant to speak. She always felt that something was wrong. The appearance of the old woman was too coincidental. Of course, what puzzled her most was that the Lizu that Harley Quinn knew was actually a fake. "Do you know her?" Lizu sat in the helicopter, looking at Harley Quinn on the ruins, and asked Alice. Although it was the same face as Lizu, Harley Quinn showed only unfamiliarity to the hooded Lizu, as if she had never known him, even though he looked like Lizu. "You don't know her?" Alice asked back. Seeing Lizu shaking his head, she said, "She seems to be very familiar with you." Alice said you, but her index finger pointed at the toy in Lizu's hand. Lizu stared at the toy Lizu in his hand and said nothing. He had no previous memories, and he needed to go to the hive to meet the old woman underground to know the reason for everything. "The world is about to fall," Lizu said, looking at the clouds staying beside him. The helicopter rose into the sky. On the broken wall of the ruins, Harley Quinn looked up and watched the helicopter leave, turning into a black dot on the horizon. "We are ready to leave," said the bearded man. At this time, including the bearded man, everyone's eyes were red. This was the price of being a bee. Their spirit and will would be eroded and infected by the lickers, and it would not be long before they would become one of them. So they had to leave here as soon as possible and send other survivors to a safe place while they still retained consciousness. Perhaps after that, they would choose to understand their own lives in a very short way. Harley Quinn sat on the ruins, watching the small black dot flying into the sky disappear without a trace. She was often angry and laughing, and could not tolerate any emotions. She released her emotions all the time, but she was very quiet now. "He's dead." Harley Quinn was a little sad. Bearded man and others also knew why Harley Quinn was sad. The Lizu she knew was dead and turned into a toy. Although until now, many people still don't understand why there are two Lizus. I don't have a very good relationship with him. In fact, there is only one person in my heart forever, Ms. Joker. Harley Quinn muttered to herself, as if she was making her final monologue, but he has been with me for so long after all, and I know very well that he is a lunatic. The bearded man standing next to him sighed and thought to himself, no matter how you look at him, he is crazier than him, but he dared not say this. Harley Quinn retracted her gaze and said, "I want to stay here for a while." The bearded man really didn't want to take this crazy woman with him. Although she had a certain fighting power, her brain was really abnormal. Global communications are cut off. The world has fallen into a zombie crisis, and the end of the world is coming. The bearded man said, "Be careful. The end of the world. Human civilization is destroyed. Now they want to survive more, and it's okay to survive." The bearded man and others retreated quickly. In addition to food, they didn't have much to take away. At worst, they could rob. Now there are more dead people than alive in this world. There are also a lot of supplies. After a while, there was a crash, and the gravel rolled down. There were footsteps. A pair of red high heels appeared in Harley Quinn's eyes. There was also a gun pointed at Harley Quinn's head. "Didn't Isaacs give you what you wanted?" Harley Quinn slowly raised her head, her eyes misty with tears. "The person who came was Ada Wang. The world is destroyed. What's the use of data and evidence? Seeing you, I know that he doesn't want to recover the data of B at all." Ada Wang had a blank expression on her face, put away the gun, and left quickly. She seemed to have guessed something. Like Little Pudding said, "What a mysterious woman." Harley Quinn watched the figure go farther and farther away. She knew that the other party was just saying hello. Harley Quinn raised her hand, wiped away her tears, and climbed up. She jumped off the broken wall flexibly and hopped forward. She regained her former spirit and vitality again. She hummed a song in her mouth, and laughed wildly from time to time, and it seemed that she laughed with all her strength, and she was a little short of oxygen. Ha 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 ha. The laughter spread farther and farther. The helicopter flew from Mexico to Raccoon City, and no one stopped it. There were only flames, explosions, ruins, and screams on the ground. Under the control of those who are interested, the virus quickly spread across the world. All regimes will collapse at this moment. To survive the doomsday, being young and strong has become the most basic requirement. The wise old man became the first to be eliminated due to physical reasons. The helicopter returned to Raccoon City at full speed. A huge nuclear bomb crater appeared in front of everyone in the helicopter. After the nuclear explosion, the entrance to the hive was exposed at the bottom of the explosion pit, like a black door leading to the center of the earth. Lizu, Alice, and Claire jumped off the helicopter. A safe journey. They entered the hive and followed the traction to the bottom of the hive. Before, Alice entered the hive, but it turned out that she only stayed on the surface. Red Queen had been waiting here for a long time. Under the leadership of Red Queen, Lizu finally met the old man. She sat in a wheelchair and looked at the three people with a smile. To be more precise, after scanning the toys in Lizu's hand, she finally fixed her eyes on Lizu's face. "You are finally here." She was confirming something, and now looking at Lizu's face, she was sure. "Can you help me regain my memory?" Lizu was more straightforward. "Follow me." The wheelchair she was sitting in turned automatically and led the way in front. At the same time, she said, "My name is Alicia Marcus. My father and Isaacs cooperated to co-found Umbrella Corporation. They developed the T-virus. I suffer from progeria. During the time of my treatment, Lizu appeared. Alicia was telling a story, and Claire felt a little sad. It turned out that the old man in front of her was just suffering from a terminal illness, and was actually not as old as herself. Alice's heart was pounding. She always felt that Alicia was connected to her. Indeed, when the other party talked about these things, her eyes always lingered on her, and Lizu, expressionless, quietly followed Alicia. Finally, they stopped in front of a laboratory. Alicia said, "It's inside." The wall of the laboratory is a single-sided transparent glass. Inside, a wriggling mass of flesh with giant yellow eyes filled the room. Chapter 236, 50 years later. The wriggling piece of meat seemed to sense Lizu's arrival, and suddenly turned its eyes, and looked over the wall. "Is this Dr. William?" Claire could barely guess something from it. Looking at the strange and terrifying creature, she covered her mouth in fear. Alice's expression also changed drastically. How could the method of restoring memory be in such a monster? If it was, that was too scary. "It's you." Alicia looked at Lizu and said quietly, "Or, it was separated from your body." Claire opened her mouth wide. She remembered that William Birkin became a monster after being injected with a G-virus. Now she was made to believe that this thing was separated from Lizu's body. She just felt that her brain began to be unable to understand. She had a headache, and things were a little confusing in her head. "I feel that there are very similar things between us." Lizu nodded and took a step. "Lee." Alice wanted to stop Lizu. All this was too terrifying to say. "Alice," Alicia suddenly spoke, "actually, you can guess a little bit about our relationship. Follow me, I can answer any questions you have." Alicia walked further and further away. Alice hesitated, glanced at Claire who was squatting on the ground and retching, then glanced at Lizu, and quickly followed. She said in her heart, since Lee and Alicia have a cooperative relationship and their common goal is to stop Isaacs from destroying the world, then he must be safe. This idea would never have appeared in Alice's mind before. She would never give up her friends or sacrifice others. But now, Alice actually felt it was strangely reasonable. Lizu also felt it was reasonable. He walked to the door and the door opened automatically. A tentacle quickly stretched out and pulled Lizu into it. Bang, the door closed again. Ah. Claire watched Lizu being swallowed by the monster with her own eyes, and her spirit almost collapsed. Suddenly, her mind regained a little clarity, grabbed the toys that fell on the ground, and ran forward in panic. Alicia took Alice to a ward. According to Alicia, she has lived here since she could remember, and seldom went out. She was constantly being experimented on every day. "This is where I have lived since I was a child," Alicia said with a sigh. She seemed to be as old as she looked, and she began to recall. But Alice didn't want to listen, and asked preemptively, "I'm also a clone, right?" "Your clone?" She had seen 2 clones of Dr. Isaacs and 3 clones of Lizu. Recalling her own memory loss of the past 20 years, Alice had already thought of this, especially after meeting Alicia. "Yes, the clones helped me fuse the T-virus, and perhaps it can cure my disease. You are the only perfect fusion, but your appearance cannot be replicated." There was regret in Alicia's voice. Unreplicable also means that, even if she replicates Alice's method, the chance of being cured is very small. "But I have seen your experience, Alice. Although you are another me, we have completely different lives, so you are Alice, not anyone else. I want to give you something." Alicia waved gently, and the holographic projection covered the room, and segments of images appeared. That was all the memories of Alicia from the time she was born to the present. "Make up for your childhood, and give you a complete life, so that you can live in my place." Alice looked at those childhood memories, and reached out her hand. She seemed to have no reason to refuse. An hour later, Alicia came to the glass house in a wheelchair. The lump of meat was twisting and wriggling hideously. It was very happy after merging with Lizu. The footsteps came from far away and attracted Alicia's attention. "Isaacs, you are always so timid and dare not use your real body." Alicia looked at the man in a black suit coming over, and her old face became regretful for a moment. Isaacs, who was considered to be not his real body, looked at the squirming monster in the room with a cold face. "He has that kind of blood, he is real." Alicia's voice sounded a little proud. The monster in the room began to expand and change. but the material of the wall was very special, barely controlling its growth. Click. Listening to the sound of the wall breaking, the control would not last long. I won this time, Alicia quietly commented on Isaacs. Really? Isaacs asked back. I know you have tampered with his memory and released so many clones in the world, all to confuse people. Alicia was sure to win. Even if you win, what? You are still sitting in a wheelchair. I will live in another way. The footsteps accompanied by Alicia's voice slowly approached from a distance. When Alice walked completely to Alicia's side, Alicia had closed her eyes in satisfaction. The breath was cut off. Isaacs looked at Alice. Even if you have all of Alicia's memories, you don't have her soul. Isaacs knew very well what Alicia meant by another way to live. It was just to inject all of Alicia's memories into Alice's body, so that Alice would think of herself as Alicia, and even live with her identity. Drive Isaacs, who created the T-virus, when did you start to believe in the soul? Alice glanced at the body with closed eyes in the wheelchair, and turned to look at Isaacs. He's right. All of you who believe in evil gods are crazy. Him, Alice, or Alicia, was puzzled, but soon relieved. Even if you use the same method as me to resurrect him, this world will only belong to the new god. Dr. Isaacs sighed. So I said, this was a crazy plan from the beginning, even crazier than my research on viruses. The most important thing to complete this plan is to believe in yourself. He is really a madman. He believes in himself to this extent. Looking at Alicia, Isaacs asked, he wants to ask you a question. When did you start to notice him? Alicia said, 50 years later. In his journey through time and space, the starting point is in the time and space where a great thing that the new god dare not touch exists. There is a completely closed world in the middle. Only here, the new god can intercept him. Your new god is a real coward. Dr. Isaacs suddenly laughed. He raised the thing in his hand. He was holding a pillow. It's not easy to catch both of you at once. He let go of his hand, and the pillow slowly fell to the ground. In an instant, it turned from a pillow into a nuclear weapon rocket that was about to explode. Boom. You. Alicia glared, and she spread her arms, and a big hole suddenly appeared in the ceiling above her head. In an instant, Alicia flew dozens of meters away, but the energy with the breath of death also caught up with her in the blink of an eye. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237 The Real Plan. Claire ran with the toy in her arms, looking back constantly as she ran, fearing that she would be caught by the strange tentacles that stretched out. Fortunately, she still remembered the way she came. It was just strange that there were no pursuers. The hive was a completely empty underground castle that allowed Claire to run. Are they all crazy? As she ran, she recalled everything that had just happened. Alice and Lizu seemed to be possessed. Suddenly, Alice felt the thing in her arms twisting. She lowered her head and found that the Lizu toy was struggling and twisting. Claire threw it on the ground. In an instant, the Lizu toy became a living person. Aha! The hive? Lizu patted the non-existent dust on his pants. It seems that the plan is going well. Lee, what's going on? Claire asked in confusion. It's too late. I'll take you out first. It has to be like this. Lizu said as he took out something from his pocket and took out a green plastic toy arm. Under Claire's gaze, Lizu's left arm suddenly turned into plastic. Snap, he broke it off by himself. The plastic arm quickly grew larger and was installed on the left shoulder in an extremely asymmetrical manner. The next moment, the plastic material faded. The green arm revealed its terrifying loop. The thick muscular left arm was thicker than Lizu's thigh. There were bone spurs on the joints. As the heart beat, the blood vessels on the left arm could be seen bulging. Let's go. Lizu raised his fist and swung it at the wall. The bone spear at the elbow joint easily tore the wall. Claire, who had been stunned for a long time, nodded mechanically and hurriedly followed. With Lizu smashing all the way, they finally escaped to the ground in half an hour, and a helicopter was parked here. Claire still remembered the umbrella employee who drove the helicopter, but this time the other party took off his helmet and showed his face. It was a tough woman. You too. Claire was surprised to find that the helicopter pilot was not the one who was threatened when he robbed the helicopter, but one of his own. "I'm Rain, sit down, we have to go quickly." The female soldier smiled heartily. The helicopter wobbled into the sky. As they flew away from the huge nuclear explosion pit, the ground suddenly cracked, and a figure flew out. But then, the nuclear explosion enveloped them. Even though the distance was extremely far, the airwave still pushed the helicopter to sway in the sky and almost fell. "Rain, it's Alice." Claire recognized the figure that came out from the ground. When the mushroom cloud dissipated, Alice's body was exposed in the flat round pit. The helicopter carrying Claire stopped by Raccoon City. The already huge nuclear explosion pit expanded thousands of meters and was bottomless. It was like a huge pond, and the helicopter was just an ant by the pond. At this time, a figure flew out of the bottomless nuclear explosion pit, instantly rushed into the sky. "Lee." Claire looked at the figure stepping on the bat-like aircraft, and shouted in surprise. Lizu stepped on the Green Goblin aircraft, grabbed Alice who was crippled by the explosion, and landed. With a light jump, Lizu landed on his feet. "Alice, are you okay?" Claire ran over quickly, but Alice was already in a coma and dying, and could only vaguely make out her human form. "The T-virus is really scary." Lizu, whose left arm was the hate arm, smiled and looked at Lizu who got off the aircraft. "How is it? Your mission is temporarily completed. It's time to kill the donkey." Having said that, this Lizu suddenly changed and became a toy that fell to the ground. Lizu bent down and picked up the toy. "Isaacs, aren't you coming to celebrate? Celebrate the success of our plan?" he asked softly, knowing that Isaacs had been watching. The voice also came from the communicator carried by Lane. "You're not dead. Your plan succeeded. I didn't put in much effort." Isaacs was surprised, but soon he said, "Are you sure they're all gone?" "It should be, at least in this time and space." Lizu waved his hand. The aircraft disappeared. The toy in his hand disappeared. He got on the helicopter and said to Lane, "Let's go. Why don't you explain what happened?" Claire finally moved her eyes away from Alice and looked at Lizu. Lizu was tricked by Kingpin a few years ago and mistakenly entered this world. It was indeed as mentioned before. There was only one thing. Something was waiting for him here. An unknown evil god, similar to Cthulhu, the mother of black goats, etc., but not as high as Dagon. If it was comparable to Dagon, it would have killed Lizu personally, or it would have been seriously injured. When the Umbrella Corporation was established, there were virus research projects and a more mysterious evil god plan. This evil god was the evil god who had been waiting for Lizu here. The enemy was in the dark. Lizu could only be sure that the other party was pursuing him across time and space because he wanted to eat him. That was due to his greed for the blood of the old gods in his body and his desire for the seeds of Cthulhu. Lizu had 2 lives and was not afraid of losses, but the other party obviously would not eat him only once. So he found Dr. Isaacs, who had a crazy plan to destroy the world at the time. After discussing with him, the two hit it off, and a crazy plan was born. A plan to kill gods. This is the real plan. Let the world be full of Lizu, so that the evil gods can't tell which one is Lizu. But as long as someone knows who is real, there will be flaws. So the madness of Lizu's plan is that Lizu himself doesn't know which one is the real him. The one who has complete Lizu's memory may not be the real him. And the one who loses all memories may not be him. After a long period of research on the toyization ability and exploration in this world, the toyization ability has been upgraded to a higher level, allowing Lizu to master the toy activation ability that can reverse toyization. Every Lizu in the world is not a clone, but a toy. After the toy is activated, it has the ability of the original body. This is why Japan's Lizu is superb in kendo, Raccoon City's Lizu has accurate marksmanship, and the Underground Research Institute's Lizu even has the ability to turn into a toy. After releasing the bait, the evil god in the dark also began to get agitated, which is why Dr. William Birkin, who was infected with G in Raccoon City and mutated, gave up chasing Shirley, and went after Lizu instead. As the best partner, Dr. Isaacs only needs to do one thing, use all his strength to kill Lizu, regardless of whether the killed Lizu is real or fake. In fact, Isaacs has long been unable to tell which one is the real Lizu. If you want to deceive the enemy, you must first deceive yourself. In the hive, the tyrant sent by Isaacs was blocked when he killed Lizu, and he realized where the evil god was, the only one in the Umbrella Corporation who could disagree with him and control the tyrant, Alicia, who was sitting in a wheelchair. Afterwards, it was no accident that the nuclear bomb that attacked Raccoon City wanted to kill William Birkin, but Alicia seemed to have some ability to restore him again. This can further lead to the conclusion that Dr. William is only a part of the evil god, and the other part of the evil god is around Alicia. As for how many splits of the evil god are outside, there is no way to know. Therefore, the evil god must be turned into a single individual again, and Alicia must be killed at the same time as returning to William, so that she cannot cure the evil god. Alicia, who is accompanied by the evil god, is difficult to kill. She can only be asked to enter the cage consciously, and she can't escape once she enters. So, they began to throw out bait. Facing the evil god, let the real Lizu act in a state of losing memory. As for Alicia, using the perfect Alice as bait, the believers under the influence of the evil god's breath, to satisfy chaos and desires, is the right choice. And Alice, at the moment of shaking hands with Lizu of the Underground Research Institute, has become one of the collections in the toy prop box. Alicia, who chose to occupy Alice's body, only occupied Alice's memory. She is still a toy. There are a lot of loopholes in this plan and many shortcomings. The biggest point is that Lizu, who has lost his memory, is completely out of control and unwilling to sacrifice himself. What should I do? But looking at the results now, it seems pretty good. Chapter 238 Exploring the Unknown. Two helicopters flew across the night sky. In the first plane, there were only 2 people besides the pilot. The door was open and strong winds blew in. You are really crazy. Dr. Isaac sat in front of Lizu, and the wind blew him left and right. They were not celebrating. Even if Lizu solved the evil god, it would only help Isaacs remove an obstacle that might occupy the planet. Isaacs' doomsday operation would continue. If Lizu stopped him, he would still kill Lizu. In his opinion, although Lizu was not easy to solve, he was not a big threat. If he did not seek the blood of the old gods, he would naturally kill Lizu without hesitation. Isaacs had a lot of questions, and now he asked the question he was most curious about. How did you come back to life? How did your memory come back? I had 3 lives, but now I only have 2 left. To be honest, the feeling of dying is like you are walking on the road, and a bird flies over your head, and the bird happens to have diarrhea, and then you jump to the left to avoid the bird poop, but you didn't expect to step on the dog poop on the ground. Lizu sighed and said, the feeling of death is really terrible. When I die and am reborn, my memories will also come back, although this is just my guess. Ha 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 ha, if I guess wrong, I might become a complete idiot. Dr. Isaacs knew that the other party was a lunatic, but he didn't believe the 3 live statement. He decided to end this weird topic immediately, so he changed the subject and asked, how do you make everything go as you wish? As far as I know, even if Alicia knew which one was the real you, would you who lost your memory jump into William's mouth on your own initiative? I made a lot of toys. There were many toys in front of Lizu, all of which were hand-sewn toys by him. Lizu, this is the complete me. He picked up his left arm and turned it into a hateful toy, sighing, the complete me, except that I don't know the real plan. He threw it lightly, and the toy flew out, and was instantly crushed by the propeller of the helicopter. This is from Raccoon City. I gave it to me before I met Batman. At that time, I hadn't become the Joker's follower. This is from Japan. Brave. I heard that he became a hero in Japan. My personal heroism always makes things worse. Fortunately, I don't have much personality in this aspect. It is said that this one likes to hold parades. I think he must have learned bad things from the Avengers. And this one. Lizu counted them one by one. As he counted all the toys, Lizu, these toys were completely crushed by the propeller. Isaacs asked curiously, so, what did you leave for your true self that made you sure that you would find William, even if you might die? The desire to explore the unknown and the truth. So free. The girl with a baseball bat and pink and blue pigtails walked out of the store with a gun on her back and 5 LV bags. She looked back at the store. This is the land of freedom. Haha, the zombies invaded. The whole city has gone crazy. The order is in chaos, and the first to be persecuted in the chaos are the luxury stores. In the past, the lower class people who stood at the door and dared not approach and could only look up at the luxury windows when the order was in chaos knew that the end of the world was coming, and they wanted to retaliate to get what they had never gotten. For example, luxury bags, high-end technology products, or smashing luxury cars, or even killing people who made them unhappy all day. The cholera of zombies has not really started yet, but people who have already received the news have already used violence to explore fairness under the instigation of freedom. Ms. Joker must like this kind of fair world very much. Isn't this the American dream? Harley Quinn grinned. She always follows only Ms. Joker, even though she has been abandoned. Not to mention, when the order is chaotic, even if the order is sound and there are police patrolling the streets, she will still carry a gun and go to any store to take what she wants. Oh, it's not good. Harley Quinn dropped 5 bags and took off the gun she was carrying. Little darlings, wait for your sister to come back. 40 or 50 zombies in the distance heard Harley Quinn's laughter, turned their heads, and slowly moved over. Bang, bang, bang. The bullets mowed down a row of zombies, but the gunshots attracted more and more gathered. Ha 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 ha. Amid the gunshots, Harley Quinn's laughter was very rampant. But there was the sound of an engine. A black armored vehicle rushed out and forcibly cut a path through the zombies. Pudding, you finally came to pick me up. Harley Quinn dropped her gun and ran over quickly. She had just run halfway when she turned back and ran. My darlings. Returning to the place where she lost the bags, Harley Quinn looked at the 5 bags, but she stood there and began to hesitate. Why is this so ugly? Limited edition? Forget it. I don't want it. Hey, I don't want any of them. Forget it. Let's go to the next store to have a look. She turned her head and suddenly found that she was surrounded by hundreds of zombies, and the nearest zombie was only an arm's length away from her. Harley pointed at the bag tentatively and said, if you want to take anything, do you see the store next door? You can take any brand name. It's very free here. Roar, roar. The zombies have already pounced on them. You really don't respect the fruits of others' labor. Harley sighed. Boom, boom, boom. With heavy footsteps, 2 mass-produced Tyrant T-103s wearing windbreakers knocked away the zombies and rushed to Harley. Opening the armored car, Harley saw Izu at a glance. He was holding 2 coins and tossing them up and down. Still thinking. In addition to Izu, Claire and Shirley were all there. The one driving was Rain. Shirley, I'm so glad you're okay. Harley pounced on Shirley in a familiar manner. The little girl looked confused. She didn't know Harley. I've already discussed it with little Pudding. Can we adopt you? Her eyes flashed with the excitement of seeing a Barbie doll. Adopt me? Shirley looked at Lizu happily. Lizu slapped his head in pain. In his opinion, adoption was a terrible idea. He preferred words like hire or use. Along the way, there was a tyrant leading the way. Although there were hundreds of zombies following the car, they were not really in crisis. After hearing about Harley's plan, Claire looked at Lizu and said, are you ready to leave? If you take Shirley with you. Claire knew that she could not protect Shirley at all. She couldn't even protect herself in this doomsday. And on the previous helicopter, she learned that Lizu did not seem to belong to this world, although it was hard to believe. I plan to go find my brother. Claire did not plan to leave here. Lane, who was driving, also said, I still have teammates. Chapter 239 Dorayaki. Where are we going? Shirley asked Lizu, holding his hand. Rain and Claire left and set out to find their relatives and friends, while Lizu and the other 2 stood on the roof of a building, basking in the sun. It was a doomsday crisis. Zombies were rampant, but they were basking in the sun on the roof. There was a constant knocking sound from the iron gate of the rooftop behind them. The zombies had already discovered the 3 of them, but they just couldn't break through the iron gate. Well, we have to stay here for another 3 hours. Lizu kept fiddling with the 2 coins in his hand, which were very ordinary game coins. As Lizu's thoughts moved, a wooden box fell from the sky. The box looked a little shabby and almost fell apart when it fell to the ground. He panicked for a few times. It sounded like there were still a lot of things in it. With this fall, the things in the box rolled around. We have to go in again. The Joker girl was a little reluctant. Shirley was puzzled. This box didn't seem to be able to accommodate even her. It's very spacious inside now. I expanded the land in the dream. There is a garden and a swimming pool, Lizu said. What are you waiting for? Harley dragged the bewildered Shirley into the box. The narrow box could easily fit 2 people. Lizu sat on the edge of the rooftop, his legs dangling in the air and swinging leisurely. He looked down, passing over his yellow leather shoes, his eyes rubbing the blood mud on the soles of his feet, and saw the zombies, that were as small as ants, but spread all over the streets dozens of floors below. Endless zombies. The zombies were merging into the building, where Lizu was. They seemed to have received a certain signal, and wanted to come to Lizu to reminisce about the past. Isaacs he could guess whose arm this was. Beeman. Isaacs must have mastered it. But Lizu was not interested in that at this time. He looked ahead, and only he could see a light curtain. Time and space gate, 2h58 meters 11s. He should leave this world in 3 hours, and this time he had a clear direction. I don't know why the evil god suddenly came to his door, but the call from Cthulhu who always provoked his nerves. He wanted to go home, and find enough strength. The site moves downward. World exploration degree. 89% world exploration has never stopped, just in another way. Knowing the Umbrella Corporation, meeting Marcus, Isaacs and Alicia, the exploration degree reaches 10%. This world is engraved in Lizu's mind star map, and becomes an eternal coordinate, with the possibility of returning. Exploring the mystery of the world, or having an intersection with the key figures of this world, are the keys to exploring the world. Isaacs, Alicia, and even the unknown evil god thought that Lizu made those toy Lizu to distract attention. When they made their last struggle, they didn't expect that Lizu's greater intention was to explore non-stop. Exploring this world has rewards, and understanding this world can draw a bigger chessboard. So he made his own toys, and connected them with dreams, to achieve the exploration conditions, which is naturally dangerous. After all, there are so many Lizus in the world at the same time, and they have intersections with the protagonist, which is inherently dangerous. Fortunately, this is the end of the world. Seeing Alice and others reach 20%, the G-Virus and serum are obtained, which have been used to cure Shirley. 30% arrived, and after Lizu personally participated in the Tyrant experiment, toyization was improved again. Toyization, Master, 1%. The improved toyization ability allowed him to have reverse toyization, which had not been improved for many years, so that he could animate the toys he was familiar with. No longer limited to turning living things into collections, although toys cannot be truly identical to the original body, and the greater the ability of the toy, the greater the energy it draws from his body. However, not being limited to the purchase channel of toys is a true toy tycoon, isn't it? 40% the range of the prop box was increased again, reaching 50 cubic meters. The capacity increased rapidly. After Isaac set off a doomsday crisis that was enough to destroy the world, the degree of exploration increased again, and he learned more and more about this world. 50%. Another Halo ability, Laughing Maniac. It is impossible to tell how it is different from Influencer. After reaching 60%, his life was increased again, and he had 3 lives. This was too incredible. No one dared to gamble with his life. Lizu was also afraid of death, so he made a decision to lose his memory and then die. It was proved to be successful afterwards, but the life that was increased this time also disappeared. Life, +2 changed back to life, +1 at 70% and 80%. He only got 2 coins, which were the 2 coins in his hand, that had no characteristics. Lizu flicked the coin in his hand again, and held it in his palm. I have to give it a try. He held the coin, and pushed it forward. There was the sky in front of him, without any fulcrum, but a slot machine suddenly appeared and floated in the air, and the coin that Lizu pushed forward was swallowed by this ordinary looking slot machine. Pull the right lever gently. The slot machine began to roll rapidly. The pattern on it kept changing, and finally stopped at 3 pictures, 3 identical pictures. Ding, spit out something. Lizu took the thing, and the slot machine disappeared. What is this? Teriyaki? He took a bite and spat it out with a paw. Too sweet. He looked at the teriyaki carefully again, put it in front of his nose and smelled it, and confirmed that it was nothing special, but just an ordinary Japanese pastry. Lizu threw it casually and smashed it straight down, falling into the zombies dozens of floors below. A zombie was hit on the head and screamed in confusion. Too bad. Lizu looked at the remaining coin in his hand. The last one, if it's still dorayaki. His expression became a little greasy. It can be said that the pastry just now was a little too sweet. Eating too much candy will cause toothache. It seems that compared to wasting a coin, the toothache caused by eating sweets is the real reason why he feels bad. The coin is sent forward. Ding. The slot machine appears again and automatically accepts the coin. Just when Lizu began to use the coin to open the slot machine for the second time, across countless time and space, countless worlds, his sight came to a completely unfamiliar solar system. The Earth also exists here. My dorayaki. Who is it? Who is it? I just came back from buying groceries for my mother. My good child is so miserable. An indignant shout came from an island country in East Asia. My sight quickly dropped down, and there was a house with no B written on it. An angry voice said, Sherlock Holmes suit. We must find this thief. It may not be a thief from this time and space. It's too much. Never mind. I remember there is another one. Hehe, thank you for the reward from little baby. Do you like it? Chapter 240. 100%. The lever of the slot machine swayed gently. The slot machine that appeared in front of Lizu was spinning rapidly. His feet seemed to be splashing water on the bow of a boat, extremely leisurely. When the scrolling of the pattern stopped, it looked pitch black at first glance. The pitch black pattern had tentacles and a dim oil lamp. The next moment, a figure rushed towards Lizu, and he subconsciously reached out to catch it. The fishy smell rushed into his nose. Looking down, it turned out to be a skeleton wearing a Victorian-era, peculiarly shaped windbreaker. Time has taken away the flesh and blood of this person, leaving only dry bones and vicissitudes. There was also an oil lamp tied around the waist of the windbreaker. The oil had run out, and spiders had made a thick web inside the oil lamp, as if it was filled with cotton. Lizu did not dislike the fishy smell, but took a deep breath. There is a very familiar smell on it. It is the smell of madness. At the same time, it was a world outside of countless time and space. Even Thanos, who had the ability to destroy half of the creatures in the universe with a snap of his fingers, could not do this. This is a town. The huge iron gate creaks. People in black clothes, carrying rakes, holding kitchen knives, and leading barking mad dogs, are patrolling the streets with neurotic mutterings. From one end to the other, passing by carriages, winding alleys, and iron cages with mad dogs. The pale-skinned man walked cautiously on the street. Although there was a red moon above his head, the moonlight shining on the ground was like white frost. Here, he stopped his foot, just as he was about to take a step. In the darkness on the right, a man carrying a musket lowered his head and muttered something. The man took a deep breath and turned back. He wanted to take another way. The alley was deep and deep. The man took a few quick steps, avoided all the patrollers, and knocked on the door with a red light at the door. Stranger, leave quickly, leave quickly. There was a voice from inside the door at the first time, which sounded very scared. I'm a church hunter, and I have encountered some difficulties, the man said, but unfortunately the person inside the door did not respond at all. With a bitter face, he walked back along the alley again. Crows flew overhead, disturbing the airy silence of the night. It's the hunter's body. The man saw a skeleton hiding and curled up in the corner. He recognized the other party's identity from the clothes on the skeleton. Just as he wanted to get closer to find something, there was a strange twist. The skeleton disappeared without a trace. Church hunter manual? Lizu flipped through the things on the skeleton. The body had obviously been dead for a long time. The clothes were made of unknown materials, and they did not look rotten. He only glanced at the church hunter manual twice, and threw it into the wooden box behind him. What made him more concerned was that when he touched the clothes, the chaos in his mind seemed to be a little different, and seemed to be more crazy. This is from the world of the old ones. He took the clothes apart, threw away the skeleton, and put them on himself. The clothes were in the British style of the Victorian era, with an English coat, canvas pants, boots, and a very distinctive hat, like a bird's beak. More crazy, but more sober, he felt the feeling on his body. Although beast transformation became his active ability, it did not mean that this power would be obedient. Bang! The iron door behind him was finally knocked open, and zombies surged onto the rooftop like a tide, rushing towards Lizu. Isaacs, I also have a gift for you. The prop box slammed down at Lizu's feet. He bent down and took out the Green Goblin aircraft and rushed into the sky. As he rose to the sky, the building became small. The clouds and mist walked side by side. In front, dozens of helicopters flew over, faintly surrounding Lizu. Where is Isaacs, and which one is the real one? He is the one who has mastered the art of making the fake look real. Lizu stepped lightly, and a pumpkin mine flew out and fell into Lizu's hand. With a light throw, he hit the helicopter. One after another, the helicopters turned into flames. There were also helicopters fighting back, but in front of the highly maneuverable Green Goblin aircraft, they were as clumsy as turtles. In an underground laboratory, Isaacs, wearing a black suit, stared at the computer screen. He said to himself, "Is this your real body? How many times can you die?" In his impression, Lizu seemed to be impossible to kill, but as long as he eliminated all of them, he would always find that one. The last helicopter did not explode. Lizu looked directly at the helicopter, as if he saw Isaacs through the camera, and said, "At least I know that you are not the real body. I'm the only one. I know everything." Isaacs knew that the other party could not hear, but he was very angry, and there was an uncontrollable flame in his heart that kept burning. He roared, "Drop the nuclear bomb and kill him." In front of the helicopter, Lizu stepped on the aircraft and turned around, spread the medicine world exploration degree. 90% his brain suddenly stopped, including the madness and chaos that he had become accustomed to. Boom, something fell into the prop box. World exploration degree 91%, 0.95%, 0.99%, 100%, 100%. There was no change. No matter his body, mind, or anything else. Lizu landed on the building. He opened the prop box and something appeared inside. A huge lighting lamp with a bat logo on it. Bat lamp. He nodded in agreement. Then he was very confused. Bat lamp? No matter how he studied it, it seemed to be a bat lamp from Gotham City, which could summon a Mr. Bruce Wayne who did not want to reveal his name. This thing should be left in the Gotham Police Department. I have to go back and take a look this time. Lizu put away the bat lamp and did not even turn it into a toy. He stood up and looked at the sky in the distance. There were planes passing by. At the same time, planes flew over in various regions of the world, dropping serum. Kill all viruses and virus carriers. Destroying the world can only reach 89%. Does the remaining 11% need to save the world? And somewhere underground, Isaacs, dressed in black, pounded the table with his fists. "Who is it? Who is it?" "It's me." A familiar voice came from behind, and Isaacs turned his head to look. That was himself. Isaacs suddenly remembered what Lizu said just now. "At least I know that you are not the real body. Am I also a clone?" And Isaacs he had no impression of could only mean that the other party had higher authority than himself. The authority of the clone comes from the original body. In the eyes of the company, the clone is just a replaceable commodity. Isaacs used to treat his clone the same way. Now, he suddenly found that he was also one of the clones. "You may not be the original body." He looked at his other self, a little flustered. "I won't be the original." Isaacs shook his head and raised his hand. His body turned into a toy in an instant, and soon, finally, the toy fell to the ground. Only Isaacs, dressed in black, was left standing in the empty room, silent. Chapter 241 Gordon's Funeral. When I was Batman, I thought that, as long as I was prepared, I would never lose. In fact, Batman never loses, defeats all troubles, difficulties, and a group of crazy people. Haha. But I was wrong. In the past, I was trapped in a battle, and I always refused to win. But things always develop in the direction they should develop. As I recognize what victory is, everything becomes clear. If you want to win, you have to learn, laugh. You will be able to drive away everything that binds you with wild laughter. Haha, ha 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 ha. In the gloomy city, a mouse ran in the alley. Its front paw stepped on the air conditioner, trying to make a big jump to another one, and its front paw did succeed, but its hind foot missed. Squeak. The mouse fell backwards to the ground. Tick 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 tick. Raindrops fell. This city is always gloomy. It is difficult to see the sun during the day, and even more so at night. Perhaps the best thing about the dark clouds for this city is that they can serve as a projection wall, allowing a huge bat logo to be projected on it. Arseholes will have a headache because of this sign, while those who still insist will believe that there is a knight in the darkness, always guarding them. A city full of chaos, the worst, but still with hope. Tick-tock, raindrops fell on the dirty and smelly bristles of the mouse. It rolled up and ran forward quickly, but bumped into a boot. Then, the mouse just shivered in place. It seemed to smell a certain smell on the owner of the boot, which was definitely not fascinating to it. The person who came was wearing a simple long windbreaker, as long as a calf. It was black and very strange. The smell of this place is too familiar. Lizu walked out of the alley. He vaguely remembered that he turned a drunk's arm into a toy in this alley. Although that world, as the flash ran, became a false world that only remained in his memory. He stood on the side of the road, looking at the people in a hurry, and seemed to be inspired. Gotham, I'm back. To be precise, he only stayed in this world for one night. It was a very lively Christmas. But compared to other worlds, he always felt closer to this place. Maybe because he was one of the supporters of the Joker. Maybe he could not forget the friendly friends in Arkham Asylum. Or simply, he just liked the good atmosphere of this city. Yeah, home. It was of course the Harley Quinn who put a lot of effort into expressing her feelings in almost every word. She and Lizu did not belong to this world either, but this was indeed the closest one among the worlds they had experienced, and it might be exactly the same as in their memories. Lizu, wearing gloomy hunter clothes, and Harley Quinn, wearing bright clothes, walked side by side on the road. They did not hold an umbrella, and the rain poured on them, soaking their clothes, and sticking them to their bodies. Their hair was also wet, but they still walked calmly in the drizzle. Pedestrians and cars along the road shunned in fear, as if they had seen something terrible. Faintly, you could still hear, "Ghosts. I think you look better when you're green." Harley Quinn chewed gum. "I just didn't have time to change clothes," Lizu answered, but he still wore this suit, because the clothes can make his brain clearer. There are many cars in front, and people are queuing in black suits. Black umbrellas are opened, filling the field of vision. I remember what is in front. It's the cemetery in Gotham. Harley Quinn jumped strangely. Who died? It can't be Batman, right? In her world, she wanted to kill the old Bat more than once, if it wasn't for the Joker to stop her. In the cemetery, the coffin was about to be buried. It seems that many prominent figures in Gotham came, but the most are definitely the police. They were drenched in the rain, and watched someone being buried. It's James Gordon. Lizu's eyes seemed to penetrate the coffin, and saw the person lying in the coffin. Oh, Harley Quinn only made an unbelievable sound, and didn't say much. The two were silent for a while. In Gotham, it's not strange for anyone to die, but there are a few people here who will make people feel wrong if they die. For example, Batman. For example, his good partner James Gordon. This is a Gotham that is completely different from what they know. Of course, it is also possible that the appearance of Lizu caused the story to fork in the road, and it is a very absurd direction. I remember there is a coffee shop in front, and the shoes sold are good. Harley Quinn pointed to the front. After returning to this city, Harley Quinn found a long lost feeling. She likes this relaxed feeling. First, she wants to go to the coffee shop to buy a new pair of shoes. Don't move. Harley Quinn raised a pistol, and the muzzle moved from the head of the woman with a good figure and dyed red hair to her chest, and then down. As Harley Quinn suddenly bent down, her hand trembled. Bang! Ah! The woman screamed in fear. The bullet rubbed her red hair and left a bullet hole on the wall behind her. The woman dared not move even more, but her body trembled uncontrollably. Harley Quinn didn't care at all and continued to shake the gun in her hand, but turned to Lizu and asked, "How about this pair?" She was trying on shoes just now. A pair of high heels inlaid with colored diamonds, emitting different lights of red and blue lights. "Well, not bad," Lizu said weakly. "Men are always like this." Harley Quinn complained, but she didn't seem to be too satisfied. She stamped her feet twice, then took off her shoes and changed back to her own pair. "Check out, thank you." She bent down, picked up the shoes, and handed them to the red-haired woman with a very polite attitude. If her other hand hadn't been pointing a gun at the red-haired woman's head, she would have been even more polite. The red-haired woman took the shoe stiffly, her body trembling. This is just a decoration of the coffee shop, although it can be worn. But red and blue police lights flashed. There were sirens. The red-haired woman breathed a sigh of relief, but then became nervous again. Although she didn't have to continue to serve the crazy woman in front of her, she might become a hostage next. The police quickly got out of the car and surrounded the coffee shop. Damn it. They saw Lizu and Harley Quinn through the glass door, and their faces changed drastically. To be precise, after seeing Harley Quinn, it was as if they saw a ghost. We are surrounded. Harley asked the red-haired woman unsatisfiedly, don't you guys buy shoes in these places without packaging? But this is a coffee shop. The woman hesitated to explain. Even if it's a coffee shop, why don't I get my shoes packaged? Harley was very unhappy. This is a coffee shop. The red-haired woman was about to cry. Why would anyone buy shoes in a coffee shop and need packaging? It doesn't matter, no packaging. Lizu quickly stood up. The shopping mission was finally over. He thanked the police who came so promptly. Pulling the dissatisfied Holly, Lizu walked out quickly. The rain had stopped long ago. 7 or 8 policemen quickly surrounded them, with their guns almost against their heads. What should we do? Surrender, or kill them? Holly asked with a gun in one hand and a shoe in the other. Hearing her words, the police shuddered. We have reinforcement. He saw with his naked eyes that a ball of green poisonous gas floated over, enveloping him and Holly, including everyone within a dozen meters. Chapter 240 To the Joker's victory. The poisonous gas rushed over instantly. Although Lizu said reinforcement, the green poisonous gas did not deliberately bypass them. I think these things look familiar. Holly covered her mouth and nose immediately, and the shoes she had chosen for a long time were thrown away. Lizu's body had long since turned into steel and metal, and it was very easy in the poison. Until the poison enveloped them and the police. Ah! A policeman screamed, as if he had seen a terrible scene. Screams appeared one after another. Lizu grabbed Holly, who had turned back into a toy, and walked out of the range of the poisonous gas with metallic steps. The gun had been waiting for him to come out, pointing at his eyebrows. Oh, it turns out that it's not him. I recognize the wrong person. The thin man stood crookedly in front of Lizu, and it was him who pointed the gun at Lizu's head with one hand. There was no apology in his voice. Here, wearing like you will cause trouble. The man looked up and down at Lizu and shook his head. Where is Harley? In this world, Harley's reputation is louder than the toy man, but it is normal. Here Lizu dropped the toy in his hand. The toy immediately fell to the ground and came alive. Seeing the ability that Lizu suddenly showed, the man tilted his head. Oh, I've heard of you. When you were chatting in Arkham Asylum, you could turn people into toys. He looked at Lizu carefully and said in surprise, I didn't expect that you could also turn yourself into an iron lump. After that, he turned his head and looked at Harley Quinn. I saw your head pierced by that sickle. Well, it's great that you are still alive. Come with me. Someone will come to clean up the mess soon. Harley Quinn came to Lizu and whispered, I remember that he was hit in the head by Ms. Joker. This is not your original world. I knew it a long time ago. Harley Quinn was not surprised, but said cautiously, but he is a supervillain. Harley Quinn never knew what it meant to be sneaky when she spoke, and her voice was very loud. She seemed to have forgotten that she was also a bad guy, including Lizu. No one was a good person. If you don't catch up, you'll be in trouble. Although the man didn't wear his iconic ugly mask, the fear gas had already revealed his identity, the Scarecrow of Gotham City. The Scarecrow led the two people through 2 streets, and then turned into a bar. Ding-ling-ling. Pushing open the door, the doorbell rang softly. In the dimly lit bar, everyone turned their heads to look. Killer Croc guzzling beer. The Riddler with a question mark outfit and a strange smile. Two-Face flicking a coin. The Mad Hatter reading Alice in Wonderland. And the Scarecrow leading the way. Oh, a gathering of villains? What day is today? Harley Quinn sat down at the bar and asked, why don't I see the big guy? Bane? He's dead. The one who spoke was Two-Face. His burned half face was full of madness, but the other half was very calm. Toss the coin up and down. That's a pity. Harley Quinn shrugged. She just felt a little sorry that she couldn't see some familiar faces. Riddler's eyes went straight to Lizu. So, Harley Quinn, who has returned from the dead, why don't you introduce the friends you brought with you? I have to say, that his suit is really annoying. When we first heard the news, we thought he was that person, so he resurrected you, because of some fetish. Ha 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 ha. Resurrection from the dead. You should have heard of him. He appeared a long time ago. Scarecrow had guessed Lizu's identity. He picked up the wine glass and took a sip. All the villains looked at him, waiting for the answer. Toyman, you can call me that. Lizu introduced himself. His eyes swept over Riddler, Two-Face, Mad Hatter, and stayed on Killer Croc for a while. Can you tell me what happened recently? You are not holding an Arkham Club here, right? Humph. Where did this second-rate character come from? Killer Croc stood up and strode towards Lizu. The people here are not good people. They like to see people make a fool of themselves, or even lose their lives. Killer Croc walked in front of Lizu and stretched out his hand to grab his head. Lizu also raised his hand to meet Killer Croc's hand. Killer Croc's hand instantly turned into a toy, and at a speed visible to the naked eye, the whole crocodile turned into a toy. The palm-sized Killer Croc fell to the ground, bounced twice, and bounced to the feet of Two-Face. Ding. He didn't catch his coin, and the coin rolled on the table. Weird ability. The bar was quiet. Although Gotham is not short of criminals with special abilities, what makes these guys more difficult is their brains. People with strange abilities like this should appear in Metropolis, Star City, Seaside City, etc. The most difficult one among them is Killer Croc, but now Killer Croc has become a plastic toy. It looks like the mold of the toy is very poor, and the parting line is extremely obvious. What do you want to know? Scarecrow asked. Scarecrow has become the leader of this group of villains. Is she dead? And me? This suit, to be honest, I think this suit is pretty good looking. Lizu patted the clothes and was very satisfied. His meaning was very clear. He knew nothing about this city. After Lizu left this world, it did not stop. Everything continued. For example, Batman caught the Joker on that snowy night. And after that, the Joker kept doing pranks. He robbed banks, blew up pipelines, kidnapped, etc. In short, he brought a lot of trouble to Batman and countless troubles to other supervillains in the city. The whole city could only hear his irritating laughter. After the Joker and Batman were caught playing games for the unknown number of times, the Joker did something that was very common to him. The Joker killed James Gordon just a week ago. So, the Dark Knight, who never crossed the line, went crazy. His good partner for many years was killed and completely angered the Bat. The angry Batman crossed his bottom line. He killed the Joker with his own hands. No one expected that the madman Joker had hidden poison gas in his heart, and when he was killed, he would release the poison gas to ensure that the person who killed him could become himself. Let the Joker spirit continue. Yes, Batman absorbed the poison gas. Everyone knows that the Joker has no clear goal, nor does he have the concept of winning or losing. He will do whatever it takes. Batman, on the other hand, must win in order to protect the city. There seems to be a very powerful saying, the Dark Knight must win. The next problem is big. The crazy Joker who will do whatever it takes combines with the wise and powerful Batman who must win. Create a terrible monster. A monster that will do whatever it takes to win. He killed a lot of people, Bane, well, and Harley Quinn, and the clothes he wears are very similar to yours, except that he likes to wear a pair of weird iron hoop glasses. The Mad Joker won, and he died very happily, but he just dragged us into the water. We have to keep warm together. Scarecrow said, we are gathering as much power as possible, and preparing to go to Arkham. We need more power. Lizu and Harley Quinn are obviously excellent forces. I don't want to mess with him, Lizu said bluntly. Whether it is the Joker or Batman, I don't want to mess with them, let alone the combination of the two. What is his name now? Bat-Ugly? Ugly Batman? Or Bat-Ugly? The Joker and Batman combined into one are definitely the worst enemy. The Laughing Bat. I prefer this name. Chapter 243 Laughing. The voice came very suddenly. He was sitting on the sofa nearby. No one noticed when he came. He crossed his legs, held a goblet, and shook the blood red wine in the quilt. I like your ability very much, new friend. Oh, by the way, haha. I still remember you, on that Christmas Eve. You disappeared so suddenly at that time. I have been wondering where you went. Fortunately, you are back now. The clown Batman who called himself the Laughing Bat grinned at Lizu. His eyes could not be seen because he was wearing a strange iron ring. I wonder if he could see the road clearly with that thing. Only the lower half of his face was exposed, and the ferocious smile made Lizu very sure that this guy was the Joker. As for the clothes, they did look very similar. However, we can't say that they are the same person just because they all have a gothic style, right? The sudden appearance of the Laughing Bat in the bar made the villains alert. They stood up and looked at the Laughing Bat warily. This crazy bat seemed like a sense of taste, smiling from beginning to end. Oh Harley Quinn, you shouldn't be the Harley Quinn of this universe. The Laughing Bat laughed. I'm sure that the one on this earth was killed by me with this. He held a small long-handled black sickle in his hand, with an iron chain tied to the end. There was red blood on the sickle, and as he stuck out his tongue, it gently rubbed the blade. With a clang, the iron chain rang, and he jumped up and rushed straight towards Lizu. When the battle started, no one blew the horn, but the two seemed to have been mentally prepared. The imminent battle looked more like a greeting. Lizu's body turned into metal in an instant. The sickle hit his fist, splashing sparks. Batman is one of the strongest martial arts masters in the world. After abandoning the bottom line, his combat power rose sharply. Lizu has the acrobatic ability of the Flying Grayson family, as well as the gunfighting skills that combine gun skills and kendo. In combat, he is not inferior to the crazy bat in front of him. What's more, he is now invulnerable to swords and guns. Ding. Dong. Lizu blocked the sickle, rushed forward and punched down, hitting the sickle, which was immediately knocked back, and stabbed at the Laughing Bat. The Laughing Bat ducked his body and cleverly dodged the deadly sickle. He swung the chain, and the sickle spun around, and then he rushed towards Lizu again, with great momentum. Ha 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 ha. I have a good friend who is called the Iron Man. To be honest, his certificate should be given to you. The Laughing Bat was generous with his laughter and nonsense. In this respect, he looked like a clown. No matter what touches me, it will become a plastic toy. Are you ready to lie in my cupboard for a while? Lizu also responded. Although it was a battle, one was laughing and chattering wildly, and the other was listless, and looked a little crazy. No matter how you look at it, it looks like two permanent residents of Arkham, fighting over a piece of soap. Swish, the sickle cut towards Lizu's ear. Lizu raised his hand to block it, and kicked the Laughing Bat with his knee. The Laughing Bat retreated again. He knew that he could not withstand Lizu's iron fist. Moreover, he found out in the battle that Lizu was not only good at making iron fists. I saw these moves of yours on Nightwing. It's a pity that he died in my hands. You reminded me of him. He was such a good kid. Haha. The Laughing Bat's voice did not sound sad at all. Yes, laughing is enough. The Iron Foot kicked over the wine table and rushed forward, crashing into the Laughing Bat like a speeding car, forcing the bat to retreat. The Iron Lump also had disadvantages. Its body was heavy and slow, which gave the Laughing Bat a lot of space to stabilize the situation. At first glance, the battle was inconclusive. Except for Lizu, the villains present were very knowledgeable about fighting techniques. Everyone knew a few moves, but they could not help in this battle. The Laughing Bat was murderous and merciless in every move, but before he could break through Lizu's iron body, his weapons could only make a few ding, and ding sounds. Instead, he was forced by Lizu to run around everywhere, and throwing the sickle became his few means of attack. Snap! A big hand grabbed the head of the retreating Laughing Bat. Ah, it's bad. The Laughing Bat said with a smile, and he didn't seem to be nervous at all. Killer Croc appeared behind him at some point and reached out to grab his head. If he squeezed hard, his head would definitely explode. Whoosh! The Laughing Bat pulled the chain violently, and the blade flew straight to Killer Croc's head at a very tricky angle. It can only be said that he is worthy of being Batman. Puff! The sickle bounced back and stabbed Killer Croc accurately. With a scream, Killer Croc lost one eye. Ah! He screamed and covered his eyes, and also let go of his hand, rolling on the ground in pain. The Laughing Bat leaped lightly onto the bar table, and looked at Lizu. You are very interesting. How about we have a competition? The battle came to a temporary end. Both of them seemed reluctant to kill each other. Competition? Lizu stared at the smile and pulled up the corners of his mouth involuntarily. It seemed that there were two laughing bats looking at each other. Competition? Lizu stared at the laughing bat. No one knew what he was thinking. For example, destroying the world. I was going to do this at first, but I was delayed because of some things. So let's compete and see. I will make the world laugh first, or you will, save the world first. Are you interested? Lizu was startled, and his smile became even stronger. The reason why he chose to contact the scarecrow and followed him to the bar was to explore the world. It seems that the laughing bat can see some clues. After he returned to this world, his exploration of this world remained at 68%. Until he saw the laughing bat, it increased to 72% in an instant. The highlight of this world is the laughing bat. Not interested. He also participated in the global zombieization in the last world. Saving the world or destroying the world was not important to him. However, after seeing the laughing bat, he found that he had something to do in this world. I really look forward to seeing you next time. The laughing bat jumped flexibly, broke through the window of the bar and flew out. If Lizu did not stop him, no one could stop the laughing bat from leaving. Killer Croc was still struggling on the ground. The pain of losing an eye was not so easy to bear. He is a bit annoying. Harley Quinn came to Lizu and said she only liked and admired the female clown, that is, Ms. Joker. For Harley Quinn, it was pure and innocent love. If the clown was a man, it was obvious that she hated it. Lizu had turned around and looked at the supervillains in the bar. He bowed and said, "I'm sorry, I can't join your alliance." After that, he pushed open the door and left the bar directly. Harley Quinn ran up and said, "Where are we going next?" "Find allies." "Allies? Kill that stinky bat? Why didn't you do it just now?" It seems that Harley Quinn really doesn't like the laughing bat. Because we are not going home to be superheroes this time. The Batman who laughs is not very important. The day after that, the Toyman who had just appeared in Gotham and the Harley Quinn who seemed to have resurrected from the dead disappeared again. Few people paid attention to the two insignificant people who appeared and disappeared because the nightmare of this city had just begun. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244 Barbara in a Cape. Arkham Asylum. On a rainy night, lightning roared, weaving into a lightning net covering the roof of the asylum. The crackling sound of thunder was endless. Zzzz. In the dim control center, only the bright light from the monitor screen barely allowed people to see the room clearly. The security guard with a cigarette, but in his mouth, was lying on the table in front of the monitor. A pool of red blood overflowed from under his head. After too much blood gathered, it flowed to the edge of the table and dripped down. However, the blood did not fall to the ground. There was a person lying on the ground, catching it all with his back. There was not just one person lying on the ground, but many people, lying in all directions. The control center was attacked, and there were only corpses on the ground. Zzz. The intercom on the table was receiving signals. Please reply. This is the encrypted channel of the Gotham Police Department. Is anyone there? Zzz. We have lost contact with areas 4, 5, and 8. The conversation was very noisy. Arkham Control Center, this is Sector 7. We have lost communication with the encrypted channel. Some of our surveillance cameras are out of order. Can you get it? A pale hand reached out and picked up the intercom. Ahem. Got it. Sector 7. This is the control center. We have received feedback in the maintenance system. It may be that the cables were damaged by rats again. The system is restarting. Believe in our technology. It will be back online in a few minutes. Ha 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 ha. The voice in the intercom was stunned and then roared. Who are you? Damn it. The control center has also fallen. Zzz. The voice was completely drowned in the zzz sound. Throwing away the intercom, the figure stepped in front of the monitor, and the fluorescent light blurred his appearance. Crazy face, dark figure. The laughing bat, he is here. He occupied the control center of Arkham, and the rioting areas could not escape his eyes. The screen was showing the figures of Scarecrow, Two-Face and others. A group of lunatics wanted to go home but almost no one could stop them. But you have to understand that this place has always been my private garden. The laughing bat smiled and watched Scarecrow and the others liberate the lunatics here. They released these guys one by one, from 1 or 2 at the beginning, to 4 or 5, then to more than 10, dozens. It took me a lot of effort to catch them in. The laughing bat kicked the corpse on the chair away and sat on it himself. I have to say, sometimes when you wake up after being sick, you will find that everything has become better. The laughing bat smiled as he watched those lunatics escape and break through layer after layer of defense. But this city, you will doubt from time to time whether it will wake up. Gotham will only be turbulent when it is described in the Bible: hunger, plague, fire, flood, death, and destruction, crime, and punishment, and all kinds of demons. This city knows how to kill, just like the hot summer, tormenting everyone, making people as sick as heat stroke. This morbidity will torture the spirit and body, as well as everyone around them, and every moment. Before that, I always believed that this city was worth saving. Every time I wanted to repeat this lie, the city would tell me with actions that it was wrong. The laughing bat picked up the sickle and the pistol. He was ready to clean up this city that would not wake up. Starting from the dirtiest place in this city. On a dark rainy night, the lightning seemed to have made up its mind to stay on the roof of Arkham Asylum. On the contrary, the sky above Gotham was pitch black. Gotham Police Department. The uniformed police officer stood on the roof, watching the world of lightning and thunder in the distance. Arkham Asylum has lost contact. We have to do something, even if there was a woman present. Although she was not a police officer, everyone agreed that she was standing here. Even if the rest of the words were not said, but everyone present knew it. Even if the bat light parked on the roof had been smashed to pieces by the laughing Batman. Barbara, a plainclothes detective in the rain, turned around and looked at the woman. The rain blurred his eyes, dripping. Detective Conley, this city will not fall into darkness like this. Barbara's expression was firm. Detective Conley was entangled, but the Dark Knight has. Zizzy, Arkham has lost contact. Detective Conley's face suddenly changed. He immediately said, now, go to Arkham immediately. There can be no problems at this critical moment. Barbara, hey, you go back first. The police car roared out and headed straight for the asylum under the lightning of the flashpoint. At the door of the police station, Barbara was drenched in the rain and lost her soul. The death of her father and the Dark Knight who died with her father have already rooted a terminal illness in this city. Barbara walked on the road, her red hair completely stuck to her face. She was aimless. People walking on the road didn't know what had happened, didn't know that they had lost the protection of the Dark Knight, and still held umbrellas to enjoy the wonderful nightlife of this city. No matter how dangerous this city is, it will always be saved, right? He is. Barbara suddenly noticed a figure in front of her, and it looked familiar. The other party was standing in front of the bar, stamping his feet, and his frustrated look was a bit like a supervillain. The famous Cobblepot family in this city is the owner of this bar, and maybe the Penguin is more famous. Barbara didn't remember the Asian man very well, but she remembered that he was Batman's companion, although she hadn't seen him since Christmas Eve. And since then, she also found that it seemed that he was not Batman's companion, but the Joker's companion. Unexpectedly, after many years, he appeared again. Bang! The door of the bar slammed, splashing rain all over the Asian's face. You will regret this. The sharp voice sounded like an angry woman. How am I pretending? He saw Barbara coming over and asked with a blink. Pretending. Barbara was stunned, but she was sure that the man in front of her was the one in her memory. The Christmas gift was still in her house. Hey, can you do me a favor? The other party waved at Barbara. Wait here later. Oswald will definitely come, and then you just need to tell him, well, tell him that I buried a nuclear bomb under Gotham, and he will definitely agree to cooperate. What did you say? Barbara was nervous, her face was cold, and she was about to pounce. Nuclear bomb. Blow up the city? If we want to participate in the game, we need some chips, right? After saying that, the other party walked away swaggeringly, and his figure walked into the rainy night. Chapter 245 Barbara in a Cape 2. Barbara Gordon watched the figure leave. There was no worse news than this. There was a nuclear bomb buried under Gotham. Of course, she could believe that all this was just a joke, but there were enough jokes about this city. The rain stopped. She did not choose to continue standing at the door and waiting for Oswald, but chose to go home. The sirens resounded throughout Gotham City. From this moment on, perhaps, this would be the beginning of all nightmares. Barbara took a shower and found the Christmas gift that the Asian had given her. She had placed this gift together with Batman's newspaper, although she later changed its place after learning some things. The bedroom was not lit. She lay on the bed, looking at the darkness with her eyes open. Wayne Manor, through the Noble Manor, stepping on the puddles after the rain to a kernel. Passing through the cave. If you can endure the darkness and the flocks of bats flapping their wings, you will see the biggest secret of this city. Batcave. The laughing bat held the blood sickle and threw himself on the chair. I'm not used to the days without Alfred, he said to himself. No one knew where the old butler who was inseparable from Batman had gone. The massacre of the night had been resolved, starting with the Arkham Asylum turning into a ball of fire. Blackgate Prison, which should have been burned as well, escaped the disaster because of his whim. It seems that we have to put it on the agenda. The laughing bat controlled the computer, the electricity of the entire city. Yes. After all, we have begun to encounter a foreign traveler, and there is also a second Harley Quinn. As far as I know, her name is not Harley Quinn. Haha, maybe there will be many Gothams and many Batmans. That will definitely be very interesting. Haha. His smile turned ferocious. Breaking the wall of latitude and crossing into other worlds is a very difficult thing. It can be seen from the fact that Lizu had to wait constantly and even Kingpin's countless years of investment and experiments. Of course, if you can get a blue stone and snap your fingers, everything will become very simple. But all this is not a big problem in the Batcave. Although he is a clown, he is still Batman. The first test, the power of the whole city was requisitioned just to meet a certain test. Crack. At the same time, Barbara, lying on the bed, opened her eyes and stared at the darkness. The wind after the rain blew in through the window, smelling of blood. What should I do? She had just been told that there was a nuclear bomb buried under the city, which could easily overturn the city. Originally, it was a very simple matter to tell Batman and let the Dark Knight save the world, but now it was different. Barbara knew the other party's changes. The Dark Knight of Gotham can't catch him. Barbara Gordon sighed. Rather than saying that he couldn't catch him, it was better to say that the laughing bat would not catch him. The darkness in front of her suddenly changed. There was a light that tore the dark air apart, and the light was like a thread that sealed the wound. The wound of the darkness kept overflowing with light. The bat can't catch him. Why don't you do it yourself? A familiar voice came from the other side. Barbara racked her brains, but it was difficult to immediately distinguish the owner of this familiar voice from a sentence. She immediately asked again, "Who are you?" But the light disappeared. Barbara sat up suddenly. She stayed in the dark, but there was only the light in front of her. "Why don't you do it yourself?" She repeated this sentence over and over again, until her eyes were shining, faintly wanting to tear through the night. There is more than one Dark Knight in Gotham. Barbara decided to make some of her own contributions to the city. The next day, Barbara woke up early in the morning and took out her diving suit with full enthusiasm. She scribbled on the notebook and kept changing it. At the same time, she also did some things as usual. Before Commissioner Gordon died, she often used some of her own methods to hack into the encrypted channel of the Gotham Police Department to obtain a lot of information. In this regard, she was always confident. But the news she got today shocked her. She knew that Arkham Asylum was attacked last night, but what happened later was beyond her imagination. Everyone in the asylum, all, died. It's him. Barbara knew who it was, the laughing bat. If there was anyone in this city who hated the lunatics in the asylum, it must be Batman. However, the laughing bat at least guaranteed that he only faced criminals, but Barbara had a more urgent thing to do. There was more than one lunatic in this city. In a corner of the underground where sin and death were buried, there was a nuclear bomb. It was another night. Batman had not appeared again. He disappeared without a trace. He did not submit a resignation report and disappeared neatly. In the darkness, at the dock, a truck was urgently loading boxes. There were 4 people guarding with live ammunition, and 2 people were carrying the goods. The boxes at the dock were moved to the truck. The bald man with a gun looked around nervously. Hurry, we have to ship the goods before a guy who likes to squat in the corner comes. Swish, a black and agile shadow passed through the night sky. After landing, he tiptoed a few steps and merged into the darkness. No one noticed that there was an extra person here. Although the lights on the dock were bright, there were always dark places. The darkness in the corner became a natural shelter. After the sound of light and hurried footsteps, the figure rushed from one dark place to another. Only a corner of the cape was raised to reveal the trace. Who is it? The bald man raised the muzzle of the gun and aimed at the corner. However, the next moment, a fist hit him from behind. The back of his head swelled and hurt, and the bald man fell to the ground. The other people heard the movement and turned around quickly, but they only caught a corner of the fluttering cape. Damn it, it's Batman. He's coming. Get ready, as long as he dares to show his head. Shoot. Huff, huff. They became frightened birds. The next moment, there was another muffled sound, and another person fell down. The speed was very fast. When the only one with a gun was left at the scene, he finally saw the general appearance of the person. Batman, female. It's Batgirl. The fist quickly occupied his sight, and he couldn't even shoot in the end. The mysterious figure who called herself Batgirl quickly opened the box in the car and said, "It's him, Toyman." Batgirl quickly destroyed everything and quickly blended into the darkness. According to the news she eavesdropped on, Toyman was preparing to do something big. He contacted Penguin, buried nuclear bombs underground, and even printed counterfeit money. It can be seen that this guy has evil intentions. Thank you bookfriend 20200412014128214 for the reward. Chapter 246 Barbara in a Cape 3. In the bar, where Barbara Gordon met the Toyman, Lizu leaned back on the sofa. In front of him sat the Penguin. In this city, the only surviving supervillain besides the Toyman. They seemed to have a very harmonious relationship, not at all like the bad relationship they had before, and they were kicked out. "Why are you doing this?" asked the Penguin. His short and fat figure, holding a glass of red wine, looked funny and hateful. Lizu looked far away, and the Harley Quinn was dancing on the dance floor. She had not learned any dance. From the movements that were completely out of rhythm, it was clear that she was just drunk. Beside Lizu, the little girl Shirley blushed and held a glass of juice. She began to realize that the person who adopted her seemed not quite right. From this period of time, Lizu took her to visit bars or to party with deformed people who didn't look like good people. "You just need to follow our cooperation plan. We must at least have some initiative." Lizu put down the wine glass. He didn't like drinking much, nor did he like smoking, and he didn't even stay up late often. The Penguin frowned, which made his already bad expression even uglier. "Doing those businesses? I haven't done those jobs for a long time. Printing counterfeit money, selling arms, and bribing the mayor to do so-called charity." As a villain with style and ready to turn over a new leaf, the Penguin was unwilling to do this. He stared at Lizu's face to see some clues, and said, "Didn't you say that you could solve the crazy bat? But now you do such a meaningless thing." The Penguin is one of the few people who knows how terrible the laughing bat is. He has fought with the Joker and Batman, and he lost miserably every time. "What do you want me to do? Go and shoot him in the head?" Lizu sat up straight, as if he had stood up, but soon wilted again. "If you want to do this, you can just spend some money and find some people to do it. The laughing bat is not difficult to kill. Although the laughing bat is tricky and troublesome, his body is still immortal. As long as it is not a combination of the Joker and Superman, he can be killed." Lizu supported his knees, leaned forward, and stared at the Penguin's face. "You know it yourself, don't you? Whether it's the Joker or Batman, killing them is useless. Their death may sometimes become a necessary condition for making the world worse. So, we have to defeat him, not kill him." Although the Penguin was still panting, he was much calmer. "So, what's the point of what you are doing now?" Facing the Penguin's question, Lizu raised the corner of his mouth and said, "I'm looking for an ally. As far as I know, there is only a new Batgirl. If you want to find an ally, she is the only one who has just started out. Theoretically, it shouldn't be just her. Lizu narrowed his eyes, not knowing what he was thinking. After a few seconds of silence, he said again, but fortunately, at least Batgirl has appeared, and our plan has not failed. The Penguin found that he couldn't see through the bastard in front of him. Although he knew he shouldn't, he still wanted to ask clearly, what are you going to do next? Let Batgirl win. Win? The Penguin was stunned. Bang! The window of the bar was broken, and a dark shadow rushed in. Ah! The first one to scream was Harley Quinn. She seemed to have been waiting for a long time, as if the script said that you should scream as long as someone breaks the window. Penguin's eyelids jumped. He was very familiar with this way of entering. The lights in the bar were still on. Penguin saw who rushed in and quickly dealt with his security guards. It was the Batgirl they had just talked about. He quickly turned his head and looked at Lizu. What are you doing? Combined with the content of the conversation just now, all this seemed to be Lizu's plan. Batgirl had dealt with all the miscellaneous soldiers. She came to Lizu and punched him a few times very impolitely. Don't fight, I confess everything. Lizu held his head. The timid look made Penguin doubt. Is this really the guy he knew? Take me to find the nuclear bomb. Batgirl said. Lizu nodded vigorously. Okay, as long as you don't put me in Arkham or Blackgate prison you will have a place to go. Batgirl tied Lizu's hands and took him away. When they left, Penguin clearly saw Lizu winking at him. When the two left, they left a mess. Penguin looked at Harley Quinn who was still screaming, and then looked at the 10-year-old girl sitting on the sofa, holding a glass of juice. Did he tell me anything? Penguin couldn't help asking. From now on, he felt that every action of Lizu was so unpredictable, although he was still unclear about the other party's final goal. Lee said that he wanted you to help buy toys. Toys? What toys? The best-selling toys in this world. Lizu was forced to lead the way in front, and they walked into the sewer, and began to make many turns here. Don't play tricks. Batgirl saw Lizu's intention, and punched him hard. We have a common enemy, Lizu said as he led the way. The laughing bat. As long as he has this nuclear bomb in his hand, he won't dare to act rashly. Batgirl was very determined. It must be demolished too. The laughing bat was indeed very dangerous, but that would be the problem she would solve next, and before that, she would never allow a nuclear bomb to threaten the city. Here, I put it here to ensure that it can be detonated at any time, while being out of Batman's surveillance. Batgirl took out a portable computer. She only needed to know the approximate location of the nuclear bomb to quickly resolve the crisis. It was not a wise move to completely trust a villain. After the crackling sound of keyboard tapping, Batgirl stopped. Are you ready to go to the new residence? She asked Lizu. Lizu just raised his hands obediently. A secret underground base. He will never escape from me. The blonde girl wearing a red cape, a red short skirt, and a big S logo on her chest said to Batgirl with confidence. Thank you, Kara. But be careful of this guy. He is full of tricks. If it weren't for the whole problem in Gotham, I wouldn't bother you. You have helped me a lot. This little favor is nothing. Supergirl is still full of confidence. Who can play any conspiracy in front of the Kryptonian? Don't worry, I will definitely stay here obediently without moving. Lizu also raised his hands to show his cooperation. He suddenly asked Supergirl, how is your cousin recently? Supergirl's reputation is no worse than Superman. Obviously, being mentioned as Superman at this time made Supergirl a little unhappy. Lizu only read another meaning. He said, it seems that you haven't contacted for a long time. I will bring you to the next family dinner. I hope Cal can remember you and show up when you do something bad next time. Supergirl cursed fiercely, looking a little cute. Batgirl also breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you so much. Now I have the strength to do the next thing. Kara asked enthusiastically, what is it? Do you need my help? Chapter 247 Superman's Tomb. A plane from Gotham to Smallville, Kansas, was sliding through the clouds. It was slightly bumpy. A figure in a green suit was dozing off with his eyes closed by the window. Sir, wake up, sir. The plane encountered turbulence. There was turbulence. Please fasten your seatbelts. The stewardess came over and woke him up, her signature smile full of apology. He didn't wear a seatbelt and was lying carelessly. The black man sitting next to him looked angry, but dared not say anything, curled up in his seat. No one knew what happened between the two before this. Oh, sorry, I'll pay attention next time. He quickly fastened his seatbelt and gave the stewardess an apologetic smile. The stewardess smiled and shook her head and continued her work. She is really responsible and very beautiful. He looked at the black man sitting next to him and asked, "Isn't that right?" The black man glanced at the other's pants inconspicuously and then nodded vigorously. Just over an hour ago, when the yellow man stretched his legs to grab his place, he was about to teach him a lesson, but he found a pistol shape in the other's trouser pocket. The green trousers were so thin that the pattern on the gun could be clearly seen. Hurry up, hurry up. The black man kept praying. After a while, the plane landed, and the bumpy eardrums were a little swollen. This is not good news. Batman has become like this, but Superman doesn't care. This person is of course Lizu, and it is not surprising that he can appear here. He has many ways to appear in multiple places at the same time, such as making toys based on himself, or making his own clones. If you want to find Superman, go to the Metropolitan Globe and ask for Clark by name. There is also a simple way: look up and shout, "Superman." On this planet, he can appear instantly. Gotham is in big trouble. Batman has transformed into the Bat who laughs. There is no reason why Superman should not appear, or is there no Superman in this world? After being brought to this world from the Flashpoint world by the Flash, Lizu only stayed in this world for one night, and he knew very little about this world. At the Kent farm, Jonathan Kent, with grey hair, sat on a wooden chair, stroking the wood grain with his palm, and the scenes of the past seemed to reappear in front of him. "Clark, you have chopped too much wood. Why don't we make a chair?" He still remembered that it was a snowy day. In order to burn the fireplace to keep warm, they went to chop dead trees and came back, and the little Clark's strength at that time was beyond human. Strength is not omnipotent. Look, just like making this chair, using too much force will only crush the wood. The wooden thorn on the chair pierced into his palm, and Jonathan retracted his hand. His eyes were also blurry, and it was not easy to pull out the thorn in the palm of his hand. It took a lot of effort for Jonathan to pull out the wooden thorn in the palm of his palm, and it was almost dusk. Under the burning red sky in the west, a figure was getting closer and closer. "Is Mr. Kent home?" The voice sounded a little weak. Jonathan stood up and squinted to look outside. Presbyopia not only made it difficult to see close up, but also difficult to see people in the distance. It was a nation. "Hello, Jonathan walked over, his face stiff. "A bunch of flowers." Jonathan's eyes turned to the other person's face. He was a yellow man, a young man, with a pale face, and looked very listless. "You are Lizu, from Gotham. I want to meet Clark Kent." "Gotham?" Jonathan seemed to have thought of something, and shook his head. "Come with me." After hearing Gotham's name, Jonathan seemed to have lost all his strength. He walked forward step by step, and his body became more and more hunched. "Something is a little wrong." Lizu looked down at the flowers in his hand. It was not appropriate to go to someone's door empty-handed, so he bought a bunch of flowers on the road temporarily and prepared to give them to Superman's adoptive mother. Giving flowers to Superman's mother might calm the atmosphere, but the development of things seems to be a little beyond expectations. Jonathan Kent took Lizu past the farmhouse, crossed the wheat field, and spent more than 20 minutes to the foot of a hill. On the way, neither of them spoke. "He's right there." Jonathan sighed, turned his back and stopped talking. Lizu looked towards the foot of the hill. There was a small mound of earth inside the circle of stones. It was new soil and obviously not buried for a long time. In front of the mound stood a tombstone with Clark Kent's grave written on it. "Superman is dead." Although Lizu was surprised, he was far from shocked. He asked himself, if he were Batman, the first thing he would do when he had the idea of killing someone was to kill Superman. No, not just Superman, but also Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, and other superheroes. Batman is just a mortal. Can he do these? Of course he can. Even Lizu, after learning the detailed information of these superheroes, has many ways to defeat them. A heartbreaking defeat is different from a killing, especially when the opponent is Superman. The laughing bat has only been infected for more than a week. There should be many people who have not been poisoned. Those superheroes who have not been poisoned cannot become Lizu's allies. Lizu walked to the grave, bent down and placed the flowers in front of the grave. Although we have never met in this world, I admire you very much. You can stick to your beliefs until death. These flowers are just for you now. Superman, the representative of superheroes. He is absolutely fair and selfless, absolutely righteous, and has humanity in his divinity. And he is lying in the cemetery now, which means that even at the last moment of his life, he must have been doing things to implement his beliefs. It's a pity that he died and could only curl up in this unknown corner of the hill. So, Lizu put one hand in his pocket and quickly pulled out a palm-sized toy gun. As he swung it back, the toy gun suddenly turned into a double-barreled shotgun. The muzzle was facing Jonathan Kent. Bang! The double-barreled gunshot instantly turned Jonathan Kent's head, who was facing away from Lizu, into a blood mist. Is he really dead? Lizu crouched in front of the tomb, frowning. After observing for a long time and making sure that there was really nothing, Lizu turned his head and looked at the headless corpse of Jonathan Kent, Superman's adoptive father. Jonathan was holding something in his hand. A small communicator. Oh. Damn it. Damn it. You actually killed Superman's father. Ha 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 ha. The laughter of the laughing bat came out. So, is this your next move? It's really disappointing. If I always win so easily, I will not stop even half a step for you when I destroy the world. The laughing bat seemed to have no doubt, while Lizu knew that Jonathan Kent had a problem. Superman died in an obscure corner, and even Supergirl didn't know, but Jonathan Kent has been guarding here, as if waiting for me. Laughing bat, if this is your way to deliberately lure me here, it's a bit too low level. Lizu gently exerted force and crushed the communicator. Jonathan Kent must have brought the message from the laughing bat, as well as some useful information, but Lizu had no intention of understanding it. Why should we deal with such a madman? Lizu looked at the countdown that stayed in this world. He had to live here, and the laughing bat was obviously ready to destroy the whole world, even the entire universe. The two naturally stood on opposite sides. Lizu twisted his neck to warm up, grabbed a red fire axe, and slashed at Superman's tombstone. As the tombstone was split and exploded into rubble, Lizu also began his own action. He wanted to dig the grave. He wanted to see with his own eyes whether Superman was under the grave. Chapter 248 Angry Blonde Girl. Dang, the fire axe with mud on it hit the ground with a muffled sound. The coffin lid has been exposed. Buried for no more than 2 days, Lizu could still smell the unique smell of plastic that had not dissolved into the soil. He reached out and tapped it gently. Dang dang, 2 muffled sounds. The coffin lid turned into a plastic toy and was easily opened by him. There were 3 skeletons in the coffin. 1 man, 1 woman, and a child. The man's white skeleton still had the remains of Superman's tights, and the S logo had a hole in it, revealing the ribs. The smell of plastic toys was the toy in the child's hand. Superman's family, all buried here. Facing these 3 skeletons, Lizu's expression did not change at all. In a week, except for making soup and removing bones, the flesh on the corpse could not have rotted so cleanly. In fact, there was not a trace of flesh left on the 3 skeletons, as if they had been carefully removed. There is only one possibility. Lizu reached out, his palm passed through the tattered S on Superman's chest, fumbled around, and finally took out a stone. Radiation. The only thing that can kill Superman is kryptonite, and this stone emits some kind of radiation all the time in the coffin, which has caused some kind of mutation, and then it has the energy to consume flesh and blood. Lizu threw the stone back into the coffin. Although he couldn't guarantee whether he would encounter Superman or become his enemy in the future, he would not take things that were intentionally left by the laughing bat. Instead, something else attracted his attention more. This was also the way he could think of after learning that Superman was dead. A few minutes later, the coffin lid closed. The loud sound of sirens surrounded from the mountains in the distance. It really gave me enough time to react. Lizu dared to be sure that the person who called the police had a lot to do with the laughing bat. The other party calculated that he had taken what the laughing bat wanted him to take and then called the police to clear the scene. I even predicted that I might kill Jonathan Kent, Lizu said, squatting in front of Jonathan Kent's headless body. The blood could not arouse his fear. Even when a bloodthirsty voice in his heart wanted to laugh wildly, Lizu put on an ancient hat and suppressed it in his heart. Then tell me, are you Jonathan Kent? He put his hands on the thighs of the corpse, and then up to the chest, then to the palm. Lizu turned over the palm of the corpse's right hand. The palm lines were old, and the lifeline was also broken under a wooden thorn hole. There were no calluses on the palm of the corpse, and the bones were slender. It seemed that he had never done any hard work. It seems that you are not the corpse is definitely not Jonathan Kent. As for who the dead person is, he may be a poor guy targeted by the laughing bat. In this world, it is not difficult to make a stranger have Jonathan Kent's memory, or even completely become Jonathan Kent. In the last world, the Umbrella Corporation could do all this easily, and the cost was very low. The laughing bat didn't want to let the real Jonathan contact me. Why? Yes, he contacted me, and knew that I might kill Jonathan Kent to force Superman to appear, or he might force himself to appear, because we all like to come differently. Then the real Jonathan Kent must not be dead. Who is he used to deal with? There are not many people on this planet who can desperately save Kent, and the person who really makes the laughing bat care and must use Jonathan Kent to deal with, besides Superman, is probably the only Kryptonian left. In the eyes of the Kryptonian, the fake Jonathan is useless. Any disguise cannot escape the eyes of the Kryptonian who can see through cells directly. I didn't expect Superman's father to be so useful. Am I overthinking? Hearing the voice, Lizu looked up again and could see the police hat running quickly in the distance, as well as shouting. I've seen Supergirl before. She's not very smart. As for the police, who had seen him, Lizu didn't care. He had too many ways to deal with it, whether it was using a little cleverness or violence. There's a body. Ugh. A new policeman saw the headless body and felt sick and wanted to vomit. Don't move. Damn it, what did you do? The police swarmed in and surrounded Lizu. Lizu raised his hands and said in panic, I didn't do anything. I just came to Mr. Kent's grave. I didn't expect there was a body here, and the grave was dug up. This statement was full of loopholes. However, Lizu did not resist and had a rebuttal, so he could only be called a suspect. The handcuffs that had no threat power locked Lizu's hands behind his back. Two policemen pressed Lizu's shoulders and escorted him back. During this time, Lizu kept saying that he was wronged, using those panic words that were obviously made up at a glance to clear himself from the matter. Bang! The iron door of the temporary prison of the police station slammed. The two policemen who were holding Lizu could finally breathe a sigh of relief and let their ears be quiet for a while. The black police chief with a bulging belly walked towards the two and asked, have you found out? Based on the clothes on the deceased, it was Jonathan Kent from Kent Farm. He was shot from behind, and his head was blown up. The muzzle of the gun was very close to his head. The deceased did not resist at all. This case was very simple. Lizu was the only one within 10 miles of the crime scene. If the murderer was not the Flash or Superman, then it could only be Lizu. The weirdo with the antique hat had no weapons on him, but he must have dug the grave. There was wet soil between his fingers. The police said what he had found and temporarily summarized, so he must be related to all this, but that guy always talks nonsense, and it's not easy to get anything out of him. First check the deceased Jonathan Kent. The deceased, Jonathan Kent. The deceased, Jonathan Kent. The deceased, Jonathan Kent. In an office, within a few hundred square meters, two people are chatting. It would be very difficult for a third person who is about 5 meters closer to hear clearly. If he is outside the office, he may not hear anything. And if a person walks out on the road, even if he concentrates, he will not get anything. This is the case for normal people, but there are abnormal people in this world. A car drove into Gotham. A red-haired woman was driving, and the next seat was a blonde girl who looked younger. Don't worry, Barbara, I'm here. No matter how powerful the bastard is, I will use my fists to deal with him. The blonde girl said, waving her fists twice, and her slender arms were not threatening at all. Barbara's expression became warm. Thank you, Kara. He became like that and slaughtered the entire Arkham. I'm not sure what he will do next. The two people are Supergirl and Batgirl. Maybe I should rush to him directly and catch him to ask clearly. Kara said, I have looked for Carl, but he doesn't seem to be on Earth. The voice suddenly stopped. Kara. Barbara felt something was wrong. She turned to look at Kara, only to see her eyes full of anger. Bang. The car suddenly fell down. The tires flew far away, and the car slid a little further under the potential energy of the chassis. Kara, are you okay? I have something to deal with first. Sorry Barbara, see you in half an hour. The iron sheet on the roof was easily drilled into a hole by it. After the boom sound of the detonation, the broken clothes fell off, and the Supergirl in the Kryptonian battlesuit burned with anger and rushed into the clouds. Chapter 249, Fortress of Solitude. Lizu's hands were handcuffed to the armrests of the iron chair. There was a long table in front of him, and two policemen sat opposite the table. One of them lowered his head to write and draw, while the other white man stared at Lizu, twisting his neck, and his neck cracked, as if he was ready to use special means at any time to make Lizu confess. This was the second time Lizu was interrogated today. What was asked? He didn't listen, because he had more important things to think about. If the police station was not relatively quiet, he might choose to go to another place to continue thinking. He still ignored the police's interrogation and kept repeating in his mind, what does the laughing bat want? It is difficult for anyone to figure out how deep Batman's plan is, but as long as the means are appropriate, Batman can always return with nothing. However, no one has ever known what the Joker wants to do. Lizu, who had followed the Joker for a while, barely understood her thoughts. The Joker was very confused. She would cause a big explosion, then organize more than 20 desperate people to rob a bank and set it on fire after getting the money. And all this might just be because of her sudden idea. Normal people's gains and losses cannot be used as a yardstick for the Joker. Blowing up a city, or even sacrificing one's own life, would also make the Joker willing, if it could bring laughter. Bang, bang, bang. The noise of smashing the table was so loud that it brought Lizu back to his senses. The white man with his shirt unbuttoned, revealing his chest hair, was already walking over with his fists clenched. It seemed that he would use some other interrogation methods. Suddenly, Lizu's eyelids jumped. Are you scared? The policeman smiled. After spending most of the day, he finally saw some solemn expression on Lizu's face. This was a huge improvement. It seems that fists are more useful. The hairy man raised his fist and was about to give Lizu 2 good punches to make him more obedient. With a loud bang, the ceiling on the top of the building was torn apart. The storm brought by the fall from 3,000 feet swept into the interrogation room and pressed the white-haired man who was walking towards Lizu to the ground. Boom. Lizu was sitting on a chair and was also blown away and hit against the wall. The strong wind swept the documents in the interrogation room, and among them, a red cape was very eye-catching. The other party walked towards Lizu. Under the obstruction of the complicated papers, Lizu could only focus on the S logo on the towering chest. Why are you here? At this time, the flying documents fell to the ground, revealing the true face of the person who fell from the sky, a blonde girl. The moment Lizu saw the other party, he had an idea. Could it be? This is the plan of the laughing bat? Kryptonians are naturally smarter than ordinary people, but intelligence does not mean that they are good at using conspiracies and tricks. Lizu thinks that he can't do mental arithmetic better than high school students. It takes a while for him to multiply and divide 2-digit numbers, but if he wants him to do everything he can to kill someone, he will definitely be fast and ruthless. Supergirl is undoubtedly smart, but in Lizu's opinion, the laughing bat used himself as bait to attract Supergirl, or simply let Supergirl attack him, which is a bit advanced. To deal with her, a kryptonite can solve all problems. Using Supergirl to deal with himself is a waste of talent. It may be a long story. Looking at the Supergirl who knew him, Lizu suddenly remembered that there seemed to be another self of his who was used as bait and captured by Batgirl, but he had not had time to contact her. He did not expect to fall into the hands of Supergirl. Jonathan Kent, did you kill him? The way she asked was very straightforward, which made Lizu stunned. In fact, many superheroes are so straightforward. Ask first, then use fists, and then ask again. It is completely opposite to Lizu's style of doing things, because Lizu believes very much that what he sees with his own eyes and hears with his own ears may also be false, and only what he finds out by himself is true. Lizu raised his hand, and the handcuffs that locked his wrists suddenly turned into rubber material and easily fell off his wrists. He did not deny. If you say that the headless body in the morgue was indeed killed by me. Supergirl's brain is not stupid. She can hear the meaning of Lizu's words. There is something wrong with the body in the morgue. She quickly rushed to the morgue. Her eyes swept over the headless body. A few minutes later, Supergirl grabbed Lizu and rushed towards the clouds. Only a dilapidated police station was left. The police officer looked at the chief. Chief, what should we do? Supergirl took away the murder suspect. This is beyond their job scope. Write a report and hand it in. The chief patted his big belly and said with a headache, if there is a problem, let the people above worry about it. You arrested me, but you are not handing me over to someone, right? Lizu was grabbed by the arm and flew at supersonic speed. If he did not have special blood, this speed would be enough to tear him in half. After entering the morgue, Supergirl came out again without saying a word, dragging Lizu to fly into the sky. She saw something that Lizu could not see. Lizu also had reason to believe that it was the laughing bat that stayed only for her to see. Why don't you explain why you can leave my cell? Supergirl's face was more solemn than ever. Now in her opinion, a prisoner who can easily escape from his cell means a security loophole, which is what she cares about most. If you have learned about me from Batgirl, you should know what to call me. Supergirl was silent for a moment before she said, Toyman. So the person imprisoned with me is a toy. She had not carefully observed that Lizu, but only scanned him briefly, so she did not notice anything unusual. But she was sure that it was a life. Lizu smiled and seemed particularly happy that his name was known. Turning toys into life is exactly what I'm capable of. Supergirl turned her head to the left front, and after a few seconds, she confirmed that what Lizu said was true. Where are we going? Soon, Lizu noticed the change in the scenery below. They were heading north. Always north. The cold air flow at high altitude had little effect on Lizu, and Supergirl had already noticed this. In the blink of an eye, a world of ice and snow appeared before the two of them. The North Pole. In the afternoon, he was still killing and arson on a farm in Kansas, and the next moment he was in the North Pole. This feeling, even Lizu had never experienced before. This is my first time in the North Pole, Lizu said in surprise as he looked at the world of ice and snow. You will never forget this place. Supergirl brought Lizu to a group of buildings in the snow. This is Superman's base in the Arctic, the Fortress of Solitude. A huge door blocked the way. Supergirl put Lizu down. She had been here many times and was familiar with the place. Lizu squinted his eyes and looked around. Supergirl's fighting ability was not weaker than Superman. Since the laughing bat had lured her, it would definitely not end so easily. Chapter 250 Chained Robin. How long have you been on Earth? Less than half a year. Supergirl lifted the carpet and took out a key. If the key was just placed on the ground, no one would be able to steal it. On this planet, it is estimated that only Superman and his sister could carry it. The door opened, revealing a huge castle. A high-tech world made of crystal. Supergirl walked forward first, then turned back and said, come in. You want to lock me up? Despite this, Lizu still stepped in. In the face of absolute power, resistance is useless, and cooperation may save you some suffering. Supergirl did not speak, but ordered the robots in the Fortress of Solitude. Two robots with the S logo engraved on their chests surrounded Lizu, one on the left, and one on the right, very friendly. Bringing Lizu to the Fortress of Solitude and imprisoning him here was obviously not a whim of Supergirl, but should be related to the information she received. But, is Supergirl really so simple to be played around by the laughing bat? If we can't lead this group of allies, then we really have no reason to blame for losing. Lizu sighed, turned to the robot and asked, do you have hot milk here? He was not a guest, and there was no hot milk. Even if he took one more step, he would be immediately attacked by Krypton's high-tech weapons. Even if he turned into steel, it would melt. However, even if there was a threat to his life, Lizu would not be a person who could sit idle. Even if there is no hot milk, hot water will do. Forget about coffee. He just said a few words casually. Supergirl was looking at her, obviously wanting to hear him say something. Let me guess, it should be the laughing bat that left a message that only you Kryptonians can see. Or, that brainless guy left a note or card in his stomach. Lizu stared at Supergirl's face. Half a year was not enough for her to learn to control her expression. He knew that he was mostly right. Then what is written above may be. The laughing bat tells you that there is a big crisis on Earth, so he needs your help. So as a villain, it is best for me to be imprisoned. Or he left you a message in Kryptonian language. Anyway, lock me up, and it is best to lock me up in the Fortress of Solitude, because there is no other place to lock me up. It is just a plastic house with different shapes for me. Looking at Supergirl, whose expression changed but remained tough, he asked, "Don't you believe what Batgirl said? Gotham's biggest problem is Batman." He believes that Batgirl must have told her. Supergirl said, "The death of Commissioner Gordon has dealt her too much of a blow. No matter what you guess, you should stay here. I guess your cousin must have asked you to believe in Batman. Although Batman's way of doing things is not liked by Superman, he is trustworthy. This will definitely be handed over to the Kryptonian girl, who has just come to Earth, as soon as possible." But Superman can't imagine that the problem is his old partner. But it must be said that, although Batman's method is simple, the effect looks good. So what are you going to do next? Lock me up, and then go save the Earth by yourself? Carl did say that he would choose to trust Batman when necessary. Supergirl nodded, but her eyes turned to the outside of the Fortress of Solitude. "Don't forget, I'm his sister, and the younger generation cannot directly restrict the elders." It sounds like a sister who is suppressed by her younger brother and has no dignity. It seems that she does not believe the clues found on the headless corpse. Carl also said that he doesn't like Batman's way of doing things, but they all have a common belief and will never repay them in the way of criminals. But there are human lives in his plan. Combined with Batgirl's words, I can be sure who came to the door. Using corpses to convey messages is the key to Supergirl's suspicion of the laughing bat. But you still followed his wishes and came here. Because I plan to solve the problem directly here. The plain words showed confidence. She is Supergirl, Superman's cousin. With invincible power, she has the capital to be confident. Even if all this is the conspiracy of the laughing bat. Even if the laughing bat's goal is the Fortress of Solitude in the Arctic. But so what? She is Kara, the Supergirl, and she will use her fists to solve all conspiracies and intrigues. The Superman siblings are not stupid on Earth, but they are too powerful. They are so powerful that they don't need to use their brains to solve problems. Sometimes they have to worry that a breath may freeze the whole city into ice, or accidentally destroy a famous mountain with a punch. But when someone comes to their door, they will never back down. Would a laughing bat make such a mistake, exposing such an obvious loophole in front of Supergirl? But he told Supergirl in such an obvious way that he was going to make a big move near the Fortress of Solitude. Supergirl can choose to ignore it and go directly to Gotham to find him out, or go to the Fortress of Solitude in the Arctic and solve it all in her own way. At this point, Lizu had to admit that the laughing bat's strategy was very good. The bat knew Supergirl very well, so he used the simplest method to let Supergirl bring Lizu to the Fortress of Solitude. Take advantage of Supergirl's unique confidence. Stay here, wait for me to solve the trouble outside, and then have a good chat with you. Supergirl floated up and flew out slowly. He will definitely make two preparations, so whether Supergirl goes to Gotham or comes to the North Pole, it will definitely facilitate the next step. Lizu suddenly stretched out his hands and pressed them on the chests of the left and right robots. His palms trembled slightly, and the energy in his body was drawn out layer by layer, wrapping the robots. After a breath, two pure steel toys fell to the ground. Lizu retracted his trembling palms and exhaled. I was almost drained. In addition to his own energy, the energy of the target also affects his toyization. The stronger the energy of the target, the more energy he will consume when he turns toy. This is also the reason why Iron Man's arc reactor has been staying safely in his chest. The other robots in the Fortress of Solitude did not seem to get the message and did not stop Lizu. Lizu then walked out of the Fortress of Solitude. In the distance, in the snow and ice, Supergirl Kara was floating 20 centimeters above the ground. The ground was shaking, and a big hole appeared. The pitch black and the polar daylight were like two different worlds. That bat actually dug a hole here. Lizu recognized this architectural style that was unique to Batman. Supergirl had already jumped into the big hole, and Lizu took 2 quick steps and followed in. The hole was 4 stories high. Boom. The moment Lizu felt the bottomlessness, hair grew on his body and his size increased, turning him into a real toy puppet. He fell 4 stories before hitting the ground. Supergirl didn't do anything to Lizu, she just accepted Lizu's action. One person was floating, and a huge toy puppet was on the ground on guard, trying to see through the darkness underground with all his strength. There was a sound of chains. Who's there? Supergirl's eyes lit up red, and her hot eyes burned through the darkness and hit the open space, but also illuminated the surroundings at that moment. It was a young man with a miserable face, shackles on his neck, and wearing a special battle suit. Robin. Ha ha ha. Uncontrollable laughter squeezed out of his throat, and finally the smile brought the corners of his mouth up. It was Robin who was tied up like a dog with chains, and he was laughing. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.